A quorum being present, this town meeting is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. One quick announcement tonight. We begin with Article 14. We will start with a presentation by Ms. Wellman, Dr. Milashevsky, and Mr. Sullivan. Then we'll have the Finance Committee report. And I do know already there are 2 proposed amendments, and we will take those in the order that they were submitted. So with that, Article 14 business, Ms. Wellman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting. We find ourselves here again. It's going to be a good night. It's going to be a great night for Reading. So, thank you. So Article 14 seeks to create 2 stabilization funds to provide support for adaptive programming for the school department and recreation. This article distributes at least 25, but no more than 100% of Burbank lease payments received by the town into each fund in an equal portion. Town meeting can choose to approve one or both stabilization funds and can change the amount distributed to the funds. The motion has the amount set at 50% of the rental payments going into each fund. If town meeting were to lower the amount to 25% to each fund, the remaining portion of lease payments would go to free cash. So how did we get here? In May of 2025, an instructional motion at town meeting sought funding for adaptive programming. That motion from Eric Gaffin reads, request that the town manager and staff, inclusive of schools, identify and create a sustainable funding mechanism for expanding adaptive programming using existing town funds and future donations from the Burbank Ice Authority. Separately, please investigate how existing funds currently with the town can be allocated for additional recreational programming and facilities, which may include additional adaptive programming. In early August, town and school staff met to discuss unified sports and adaptive programming in depth, including expansion needs and funding. During the same time frame, work was progressing with the Reading Ice Arena Authority on securing a parking agreement for pickleball courts approved at town meeting. As the project was going through permitting, the Ice Arena Authority reached out with a request for the town to ask town meeting to create a stabilization fund where a portion of the future lease payments could be deposited to help unified sports, which aligns with the previous instructional motion. It was viewed at the time as a win-win proposal. Funds previously not being utilized regularly would now be secured for supporting adaptive programs, and the question would be left with town meeting to make the decision. The language within the lease amendment and with the Reading Ice Arena Authority is clear that rent payments only go to a stabilization fund if approved by town meeting. If the stabilization funds are not approved, the payments go to free cash. Due to the varying nature of lease payments, based on the formula within the lease, the town hasn't planned for nor utilized funds from the arena in years. Last year was the first time the funds were proposed to be used to help fund the pickleball courts project, as reserves had built up to roughly $400,000. At that time, public attention really started to look at these funds. The remaining funds passed to free cash and will do so in the future unless these stabilization funds are created. Why do lease payments vary? Nope, go back. There's more information in my writing than there is on the slides. The intention of the lease was to create an asset for the community in the form of an ice arena that would never actually cost the town money to operate or maintain. The provisions of that lease agreement have heartily achieved that goal. Lease payments to the town are based on a formula within the lease that allows for the authority to save funds in its own contingency reserve, which adjusts for inflation. Once that reserve reaches its maximum, then lease payments are paid to the town. The structure of the lease was never to prioritize rent payments to the community. Rather, it was designed to independently fund the ice arena without taxpayer funds, and any remaining funds were intended as gravy. Prior to 2010, the Reading Ice Authority had paid over $1.6 million to the town in the form of pilot payments for the land lease, contributions to the YMCA in 1999 and 2000, and direct payments to the town. Since 2010, payments to the town have amounted to over $895,000 for a total of more than $2,495,000. Adaptive programming. Thank you. Based on public discussions before the Select Board and the Recreation Committee, as well as public feedback, I changed the original draft language for this article from one fund for just unified sports for the school department adaptive to one school department adaptive programming stabilization fund and one recreation department adaptive and therapeutic programming stabilization fund. I talked to the superintendent of schools before making this change and brought it before the Select Board. This change was in an effort to be more inclusive of future adaptive programs at the school department, as well as reflect future creation of adaptive and therapeutic programs by the Recreation Department. As part of the new Reading Center for Active Living, Recreation wishes to hire a therapeutic recreation staff member, which will be able to offer adaptive and therapeutic programming to people of all ages. There is no current funding source for that staff member or related equipment for the recreation adaptive programming other than through programming fees. At the school department, as you will hear more from Dr. Milashevsky in a moment, and as this body has already passed for FY27, an additional $25,000 was added as a community priority to fund specifically unified sports through the school department budget. That $25,000 will be added to the school department budget base from now on. I will ask Dr. Milashevsky and then Jim Sullivan, our recreation coordinator, administrator rather, to please come forward for their presentations. Thank you.
Dr. Milashevsky.
Good evening, town meeting members. One of the biggest questions we've received from town meeting members over the last several months is just what is unified sports? What's the history in Reading? What does it look like? What's the impact? Things like that. So we wanted tonight, just before opening up obviously for conversation, to give the community just a chance to hear a little bit more about Unified in Reading. A brief presentation from Tara Herlihy. If you don't know Tara, Tara's a Reading resident, a longtime special education teacher at Coolidge Middle School. She leads and oversees all of our unified programming. Before she jumps in, I'd just like to publicly give a thank you to Tara. When she helped, thank you. She will very quickly defer credit to members of her team. I think anyone who's been inside the schools the last few years know that her leadership was integral in getting programming off the ground and running and expanding to a level that I don't think any of us saw happening just a few years ago. So just her leadership, her vision, her advocacy for students has helped create a program that has truly transformed the culture and access and opportunity for so many of our students. So Tara's going to walk us through just a little bit about what Unified looks like in Reading, but I just want to make sure people knew that she has really been the driving force behind where we are today. So with that, this is Tara Herlihy.
Ms. Herlihy.
All right, so the core of Unified Sports is bringing students together. So Unified is for everybody. Unified Sports are for kids with physical limitations, kids without physical limitations. It's for kids with developmental disabilities and without. It's for kids who are on the varsity basketball team and want to do a different activity that's a little bit less low-key and a different season. But our mission is to really promote not only inclusion, but a true sense of belonging for our students, and we definitely do that. If you haven't had a chance to come to a game, it wouldn't take long for you to realize that, these kids are friends. They've made great connections. They're having a great time. Like Dr. Milashevsky said, we couldn't have foreseen the interest that we would get in the program. We'll talk about numbers and how many students we have participating, but we kind of went with a if you build it, they will come type attitude. I knew that I'm a sixth grade teacher, and I knew that some of my former students would definitely be in for it, but the turnout that we got far, far exceeded what any of us thought would happen, so that was amazing. So it's clear that we built a space that was a need in our community, and I think it's something that Reading should be very proud of to have in our community, because we're offering a really wonderful opportunity for so many kids. I feel like what we're doing for some of these kids, they're so much more physically fit than they were previously. Their social skills are improving in a much different way than you can find in the classroom. And just kind of teaching them to, feel a little more confident and feel good about themselves. So that is, our mission. Yeah, like we just said. Well, and the other thing, we'll talk about the different offerings, but I feel like another piece to Unified Sports is that we're teaching our students how to be healthy for the rest of their lives. It's not really just about the season that we're in right now, but just building in some activity into their daily life, just great habits. And we've created a space for so many kids to come and just, take part in something that's super healthy and super, positive for them. Students without disabilities love our team as well. Like our peer partners are incredible. And I feel like so many kids, maybe they have a job, they can't commit to a full-time varsity team. We're a place where they can come 2 days a week, they can be part of a team, they can have all that, the good that comes from being part of something like a team without the same level of commitment. All right, so we began in 2004. Malden used to host what they called school day games. It was a track and field event. It was Special Olympics at that time, and Unified Sports is under the umbrella of Special Olympics of Massachusetts. So we would go, I don't know, I saw an email at some point, so we got like a little group together. We started with 5 kids and a van, and then that program grew exponentially as well. At the end of our time, we were taking 80 kids from all schools across town, not just 5 kids from Coolidge, to this event. Then COVID came. Obviously, the event didn't happen that year. The following year, 2021, they still weren't going to open up their school day games. And so I felt like we felt so bad for the kids because that was their one day a year that they so looked forward to. It was so fun. And they got their medals, and it was so exciting. And then obviously, we knew we couldn't do it during COVID, but in 2021, pitched the idea to Dr. Doherty at the time, can we do our own for Reading? And it was like a huge success. Everybody loved it. So many people said, well, let's keep it in town. This is great. So as of this year, we have 120 students signed up for Unified Sports Day, which is on June 5th. We do it at the end of the school year each year. So we have students from all schools. That's open to kids K through 12. But after that first year, we had been trying around the idea of Unified Sports. I heard of it. There weren't as many teams available as there are now. But of course, COVID shut a lot of things down. But after this Unified Sports Day, we kicked it back into action. And then the following school year, we started with our very first spring RMHS basketball team, and a lot of schools within the Middlesex League are, part of the spring league. So that was great. Loved it. We had an awesome turnout for that. We went to other schools. We played games. We had a jamboree. It was amazing. And that was just spring, and it was just high school. But we said, okay, well, they loved it. So why would we only have it in the spring? Because they kept saying, well, we should have a team in the fall, and we should have a team all the time, and they should, right? I know my children get so much out of athletics at the high school, and we want that for everybody. Sports are for everyone. So then we talked to John Futo at the Y. He was super open to having us join make a program. We have a strength and conditioning in the winter. We keep track of the fitness levels when they come in, and when they kind of like if you were at a gym and you worked with a trainer, and fitness levels when the students leave. There's a cardio component, there's a fitness component, a strength component. So again, we got a great turnout for that. The numbers are all up here. And then in the spring, Middlesex League has a league again, and so now we offer where you can be a 3-season varsity athlete. Playing all unified sports, which is truly amazing. But I'm a middle school teacher, so I felt like we were leaving those kids out. We can switch. So then we started last year with the middle school. The state of Massachusetts has 3 seasons for middle school as well. Fall is bocce, and I've never played bocce before, but it's actually it was really fun. It's very competitive, and everybody can play bocce. It's not a whole lot of high physical abilities needed, but it's more like skill-based. So the kids had a great time with that. We hosted, the last 2 years, we hosted the bocce jamboree for our area. We had kids from other schools come. It was amazing. And we let the middle schoolers start joining our program at the YMCA. They loved it too. And the state has a short spring season of basketball for middle school. So we've been doing that the last 2 years as well. It's basically like the end of February and the whole month of March. So the goal is now to possibly, make a future for even our younger students. So these are some of the goals that we have for the future of Unified, because like we've said, it's grown so much just in the short time that we've been doing it. So in 4 years, we've truly ramped up each year a little bit more. The things that we use funding for, just uniforms, equipment. Best Buddies is very alive and well and thriving at the high school, and it's a wonderful program. At the middle school, we're only really able to do it when I'm not coaching a team, which is only like a few weeks. It's like in between the fall and the winter seasons, and we do little activities, and we do get a different group of kids. Some kids don't necessarily love the athletics, but they'll come to the Best Buddies. And so we would look to the future to have Best Buddies be something that could be consistently running throughout the school year. And one of the other things that we really want, this year we had more participation from Parker. We would like to make sure we're inclusive of all the students in the middle school. We start our events a little bit later to give them a chance to drive over. But I feel like we still do get more Coolidge kids just because I'm a Coolidge teacher, and I've had a lot of the students that first start to come to our programs. So if we were to look at elementary and expanding to younger students, the thought process would be that we would start with upper elementary, because those kids would be transitioning to middle school sooner, so like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And we were thinking, we had some meetings in the beginning of this year. I was hoping to make this happen this year, but it just didn't happen. We kind of need people, and we need to be able to fund people with stipends if we have them running these programs. But just some short 4 or 5 week programs to introduce different, team play, non-competitive play, social skills, outside of classroom social skills, and just offer some activities for the kids. And we have
Ms.
plenty
Hurley,
of...
you've reached the end of your time. Do you need more time?
Do you have
Do you need more time?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay. Any rough guess? Just a
5?
5 minutes. Is there any objection? Not appearing?
Okay,
Continue.
sorry.
No problem.
Sorry, this is my favorite topic, so I'll go really fast. So, we want to introduce our younger students to the unified philosophy before they reach middle school. So these are the things, budgeting, we would have dedicated funding for these activities. We already run a senior day. We get flowers, we buy banners. If you have a kid who's gone through Reading High School, every senior gets a banner when it's their sport day. We want to make sure we are doing all those same things for our kids. And the future of Unified, we want to try to expand and maybe have a fundraiser, a type of walk, 5K, different activities that we can offer to the whole community, because Unified's for everyone. And I think the next one. All right, so this is just a short clip of our 3 captains. Oh, it's not going to let you play it. Sorry. All right. So we have team captains. The black sweatshirt is Aiden Mullen. He was our fall captain. He does track now, so he doesn't do the spring season of basketball. That's Austin Lee. He's in the middle. He was our fall and our spring captain. He's a 4-year unified player. And Charlotte Robichaud is, she's the varsity girls basketball captain, and she is our spring captain along with Austin. And they're amazing kids. I can't tell you how great it is to have actual basketball players join the team because I am not good at basketball. So they really help. Our kids have gotten so much better when you watch how they set up plays, and the peer partners teach them how to do that, and they've just truly been amazing. And I'll read you one piece. We have some testimonials from our amazing parents, and I'll read you a portion of one. For students like my son, this program is not simply an extracurricular activity, it's an opportunity to participate, grow, and belong. He is truly an athlete, however, due to his autism, including sensory sensitivities and executive functioning challenges, he would not typically have access to general education sports. Unified has given him a platform where he can succeed and be recognized for his abilities. So that's truly what our mission is. That's what we do.
Mr. Sullivan, who's going to be speaking next? Oh, Mr. Sullivan, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Sullivan, Recreation Administrator. Just got a quick little statement I wanted to make. I actually wasn't going to say anything, but I think it's really important to kind of get across what we're looking to do, hopefully in the very near future. I did take notes. I can get scrambled, so I'll be looking down at my paper. I'm basically here tonight to speak in strong support of adaptive therapeutic recreation within our community as well as the Recreation Division. Over the past 3 years of my employment, we have accomplished meaningful initiatives despite limited resources and without a dedicated staff member that is educated or certified specifically in adaptive or therapeutic recreation. While progress has been made, the need for programming and support exceeds what we're able to currently offer. Current programs include our special skate program, which is run in collaboration with the North Shore Skating Club, truly outstanding staff and dedicated volunteers, many of whom are high school students and athletes, giving their time and energy to support inclusion. We've also partnered with inclusion sports and outside vendors specializing in inclusive programming to help broaden access and opportunities. Most recently, in partnership with the YMCA and school volunteers and supported through opera funding allocated to the town several years ago, we've been able to provide impactful social events for teens and young adults. These initiatives have included outings with 25 to 40 participants at a time. Most recently, we went to Canopy Lake Park Fright Fest, which was a lot of fun. It was a little bit scary for a lot of the kids. They had never done anything like that before. Went to the Celtics game. The Celtics game, a lot of kids had never won on the train. So something as simple as getting on a train, paying for your own ticket was huge. We went to the Red Sox games, Woo Sox games, WWE wrestling event, which was a lot of fun, Masters of Illusion magic show. I can tell you the memories created through these experiences for a group that is often underserved have had a profound impact not only on the participants, but the families, but myself. I kind of get emotional when I talk about it. The ARPA funding, however, has now been fully utilized. Without continued investment, these opportunities risk stalling at the very moment when demand, awareness, and engagement continues to grow. Securing funding would allow us to not only sustain what we've built, but to expand it across all ages and abilities. There is a clear and growing need for a dedicated, adaptive, and therapeutic recreation specialist. Someone who brings a professional experience to design inclusive programs, support individuals with varying needs, train staff, and build a coordinated system of opportunities. This includes adaptive camps, clinics, structured socialization programs, wellness initiatives, and recreational access that supports mental, emotional, and physical well-being across one lifespan. Just got half a page left. Looking ahead, we will be opening the Reading Center for Active Living in a little over a year and a half. Within that vision, we have already carved out a position for what we hope will become a part-time therapeutic recreation specialist with hopes of it becoming full-time. This is not an emerging concept or nice to have. It's a service model already in place in surrounding communities and something we truly must have in this town. Towns such as Burlington, Lexington, and Andover have long offered robust therapeutic and adaptive programming. In many cases, our residents are traveling there daily. Most importantly, this initiative for more adaptive therapeutic programs is about servicing those who can be very vulnerable in our community. These opportunities will reduce isolation, they support families and their caregivers, they strengthen mental health and community connection, and they ensure that residents of all abilities are not just accommodated, but meaningfully included. I think we can all agree that Reading is an incredible community. There's clearly a gap in adaptive and therapeutic programming, and it's time we begin to address it in a meaningful and sustainable way in the very near future. Before I close, I just want to acknowledge my amazing rec committee. I think there's 3 or 4 of you guys in the crowd. At each of our meetings, this is one of the initiatives that they continue to push on myself and staff. I'm a staff of 2 right now, so it's a lot of work, so we're continuing to learn and go develop and go to conferences to learn more about adaptive and therapeutic rec. I appreciate the conversation that has come up over the last few months with this article. It's brought up a lot of good dialogue, a lot of good questions, and I'm sure it's going to bring up a lot more in the next few minutes. It's an important conversation, one that reflects both awareness and a commitment to serving all of our community and its needs. Thank you.
FinCom report, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ed Ross, FinCom. To open, I just wanted to state our vote did not represent a judgment on the merit of adaptive sports or expanded unified sports in the schools. There's been a lot of conversations about that, and I just wanted to kind of state that unequivocally. Any statement to the contrary is at best misinformed and at worst in bad faith. And just as a reminder from last week, and folks have mentioned it already, FinCom voted to add $25,000 more to the FY27 school budget to expand unified sports. That was the first time any type of adjustment that I've witnessed in my 7 years on FinCom. Our vote was a result of a discussion, an unemotional one, on the mechanism of a stabilization fund, the constraints it places on budgeting, and the irregularities of the Burbank rent payments, which over the past 10 years, as folks have mentioned, has averaged slightly over $45,000 a year, with 6 years under that total, including 2 years when there wasn't any. Our Chief Financial Officer and Town Manager explained to us how we create and fund budgets. Reading hasn't used stabilization funds very often, and rarely, if ever, for an operating budget. With budgets severely constrained, we discussed that establishing a community priority within the operating budget, similar to what Reading did for full-day kindergarten a few years ago, to do that to accommodate adaptive sports and expanded unified sports would be the most stable way to fund it. The decision also touched on the merits of the stabilization fund, and as a committee, we felt an amended article with either lower funding percentages and or a cap would make it more a useful tool for any of the one-time costs or as a source to expand programs in the future. We've learned since then from Town Council that a cap wouldn't necessarily be a possibility. But again, in looking at funding something from an operating budget perspective, it was really, we discussed more about the funding source and having something as a community priority, kind of well established within the operating budget would be preferable. So to close, in our recommendation vote for this article to town meeting on our March 11th, 2026 meeting, we voted 4-4 on this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we have 2 proposed amendments. We will start with those. The first that came in was by Mr. Powell. I would ask that you, Mr. Arena? Point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Arena, Precinct 1. While I understand amendments can be offered at any time, it strikes me that since the amendments are written and since the body hasn't even discussed the main motion, it's incredibly difficult to both keep in our minds the main motion and the amendment effect. I can't argue with the introduction of it, but I think it's much like the budget meeting of last November. Having 2 arguments in play at the same time is incredibly confusing. And I would ask politely that you allow some dialogue on this to at least get the essence of it and any clarifying questions settled before we entertain an amendment to those matters with those unanswered questions lingering.
I take your point. First, I want to say that we do only discuss one thing at a time, so it would be just the amendment, but you do have a point about getting the main argument out first. And I think we will do that. I think we'll wait maybe 15 minutes before we take that up. It's not a bad idea. At least we get the debate on the entire thing.
I do have 4 clarifying questions on the motion in our book tonight, however.
Before we do that, Mr. Powell, I just want to apologize. I did call you, but we will wait a few minutes. Okay, then we will discuss the main motion without the amendments right now. Mr. Arena first.
I'm not entirely sure who to direct this to, but first I want to recognize Ms. Herlihy's presentation. We normally deal with pedestrian topics like money, and I'm so inspired to look at what the school has done with children who have maybe struggled in traditional educational and athletic programs. And to me, it's like planting a seed and watching something grow. You found the soil to get these kids to sprout. My first question is, in the explanation language, the background language, there's a reference to rental payments would go to each fund in equal portion, but I don't find that language in the motion proper itself. Where does that requirement for equality come from?
Ms. Wellman?
In the language, we have it so that the motion has it for 50% and 50% in each article, in each stabilization fund. The requirement under the law is the minimum is 25% for each stabilization fund.
I see the minimum language, but I don't see the need for them to be precisely the same for each stabilization fund, but that reference is in the background.
I'll defer to council.
Ms. Freed?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ivrea Freed, Town Council. So as I understand the question, it's are the stabilization funds required to have the same amount of funds dedicated to it? Is that the question?
The last sentence of the background in our book tonight says no more than 100% payments received by the town to go into each fund in an equal portion. I
Right.
don't see that equal portion reference anywhere in the motion proper.
So the motion dedicates 50% of the revenue received from the Burbank rental payments to each stabilization fund. So in the motion itself, if you could scroll up, Jax. Yeah, and can you highlight it? Dedicate 50%. So there it says that dedicate 50%. They're not required to be the same. If this body wants, it could dedicate 25% to one stabilization fund and 50% to the other stabilization fund. That's a policy determination for this body.
It was just a clarifying question. I couldn't see where that language originated from. Thank you. My second question is the reference to 25 to 100% of the stabilization fund. That's the amount that can be drawn out of the stabilization fund and distributed.
No, so, thank you, Mr. Moderator. So, under the law, stabilization funds can be created by this body. In addition, this body can dedicate at a revenue source to a stabilization fund. The minimum amount that can be dedicated to any one stabilization fund is 25% of that revenue source. So when we were crafting the warrant article, there was an appetite to have it be as flexible as possible. So we expressly stated from 25% to 100% because we didn't want to cap this body's ability to determine what those percentages would be. When withdrawing from the fund, you can withdraw the fund down to 0. That would require a vote of town meeting, but you can withdraw as much as you'd like.
That much is clear. Thank you. Does the language as shown on the screen prevent or permit a later transition to a more traditional town school funding and thereby using the stabilization fund mechanism as more of an entrance ramp? Is there anything here that precludes a later discussion that transitions to traditional funding?
The answer to that question is no, with one caveat. if you dedicate a revenue source to a stabilization fund, you can't revoke that dedication for, I believe, 3 years. But after that 3-year period, you can choose to revoke the dedication. The funds would go to the general fund and you could shift it into your operating budget, or you could continue to use the stabilization funds created and use alternative funds to fund the program.
In a blended fashion over, say, the
Exactly.
3 years, okay. And unlike many financial articles, this one is silent on the approximate amount of funding that the programs would need to be healthy and stable. And I don't mean to bring it up for argument's sake, but rather just as a figure of merit. What's the approximate amount of funding that these two programs will typically need within, 25%?
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll defer to the superintendent of schools to give you the funding for the unified sports portion or the adaptive school side adaptive sports programming.
Thank you.
Dr. Milichewski?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So we, last school year, was about $25,000 from the school, budget, from our athletics budget to fund unified programming. If we want to expand in the ways that Ms. Herlihy outlined tonight, that would be around an additional $25,000 to be able to do everything that we would want to do. Now, there's obviously layers to that, right? You could, if we had less, we would obviously not be able to build out maybe all of the program we want. But all in all, the program of what the community we feel like we'd like to build is around $50,000.
And that 50K is across the two or each?
That's for school unified.
But not the recreation portion?
Correct.
Okay, so that might be an equivalent amount, plus or minus, sort of thing.
Yep.
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Regarding the recreation portion, I defer to Jim Sullivan, please.
So right off the bat, for the part-time therapeutic assistant, that would be about $25,000. I think it's 22 that we're budgeting for that. To get something off the ground, I would say it'd probably be another 25 and kind of seed money, as you mentioned, to get things going. So initially, it'd probably be $50,000. 3 years from now, when we see that there is a need for it, I'd love to get a full-time therapeutic rec where that salary ranges from 65 to 85. But with this, when it gets developed, it would run similar to how we run right now with our revolving fund, where fees would come in that would help support the staffing and the programming needs.
So on the town side, say 25K in terms of salary and 25K in terms of expense?
In year one, yes.
Okay. Having just come off of looking at 7 and 8-digit motions for approval, this seems relatively modest discussion. So thank you very much.
Before we get to either point of order, I just want to say, once we get through the people that are currently in line, we will then take those amendments. Now, I don't know who was first. Were there 2 points of order? Okay. Ms. Binder, point of order?
In the warrant report, it says the bylaw committee report would be delivered at town meeting, but you skipped over that. Can the bylaw committee give their report? Oh. So
The reason it was not called on is the bylaw committee is not required to have a report on that. It doesn't mean they cannot, but
they do. I think they did.
Yeah, I think they may have, and if they would like to speak, that's fine. Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jesse Arnold. I am the chair of the Bylaw Committee. Just to explain, Bylaw Committee will not be making a report on this. We discussed it, we voted on it, we thought we had to vote on it, and I made a decision that our vote was on the language, and that is moot when we're discussing this because we didn't have to discuss it and vote on it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Berman?
My turn.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I have a point
Ms.
of order.
Williams, yes.
I'm just going to echo John Arena's point of order that we have never put a time limit on an article to skip ahead to an amendment, and it's very bothersome.
Well, it is, I understand, it is a little tricky, but the proposed amendments came in to the town hall, and we do ask people to do that if possible. But I do take Mr. Arena's point that we really need to discuss it a little bit first. But I've just determined that's about when we normally would take an amendment, so we will. Mr. Berman?
Great. Thank you. Barry Berman, Precinct 6. It's hard to sit in the audience and not be touched by Ms. Herlihy's presentation, Mr. Sullivan's presentation, about the merit and the good that this program does. But wearing my FinCom hat and my Select Board hat for a number of years, I was always trained to look at uses and sources of funds, to kind of really dig in and find out what it is that we're really trying to do. Right now, there's $25,000 that the school department has put forth that's in the budget, and now we've heard that in year one, they're potentially to just do some of the things that Ms. Herlihy laid out to expand this program to elementary schools and middle schools. We're looking at potentially $100,000 between hiring a part-time person and expanding. So right now, there's not enough money allocated in the budget to do these kinds of things. Now, obviously, I'm sure that the money will get, the money will get spent on the things that it is, and then it'll grow. So we're trying to create a program where we have trying to do sources of funding before we really understand the uses. And I think I would really like to see more fleshing out about what a budget would look like, what we're going to spend money on. Granted, it's not a ton, and just sort of in increments, how that money would get spent. The other part of the equation is sources of funding. I remember being in a select board meeting in FinCom and being really grateful of the contribution that we got from the Reading Ice Authority, another great asset, by the way, in this town. But then there were times when they needed a Zamboni, or the ladies' locker rooms needed to be redone, or a new roof, and then the money was not there. So I question whether or not, while this is this is great to have, is it a reliable source of funding for such a valuable program? I then think back to some of the other community priorities that have come before this body. The first one that I could remember was RCASA. That was what it was called before it was Coalition, right? That was funded by grants, and those grants ran out, and then we had to decide as a town, are we going to let this program fall by the wayside, or are we going to come together and basically say, no, this is something we want to have, and now it's an accommodated cost that's in the budget. We fund the Coalition, right? That was a community priority. Same thing for all-day kindergarten. I paid almost $5,000 the first time they offered it, and now it's free. I am grateful that young families coming into town can have all-day kindergarten for free. So while I applaud the sort of setting aside of these funds, I really worry about the reliability of those funds in there, because the worst thing you want to be able to do is to have a program that takes off like a rocket, right, and all of a sudden, now there's no money and now we're scrambling. So I really want to kind of, if there is another source of funding, I would love to look at it. I would probably vote for it. But I have some concerns about using money that traditionally, while the ice arena has given millions of dollars to the town, there were some years it was zero. And you don't want to run a program where you go full-fledged and now you don't have the funding source. So I want to hear more about that from the advocates, about what's Plan B, right? If the funds aren't contributed to these stabilization funds, how are we going to fund this program? I mean, I would vote for it if it came back here, because it's so valuable. But you don't want to set up a program that A, you're not really sure how much it's going to cost, and B, we're not really sure where the money's going to come from in a pinch. So those are the questions I would like to see addressed before I make a decision on voting on this. Thank you.
Yes, over on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Excuse me 1 second. Did you have a follow-up on that?
I did, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Moderator.
sorry. We'll get
No,
back to
thank you
Ms.
very
Berman.
much. Thank you, and thank you to Mr. Berman for the question. I just wanted to clarify one thing so that we're really clear. Unified Sports is not looking for $100,000. Adaptive Programming at the schools is not looking for $100,000. They currently fund their program at $25,000 out of their athletic revolving account, and through the community priority that was set forth in Article 10, there's another $25,000 that has been put forth for Unified Sports Programming as a community priority. So that's $50,000 for the school portion of this article. The Recreation Department has proposed, as you heard earlier, about $25,000 for salary, $25,000 for expenses. Neither of these programs will be able to grow without some funding. There is no additional funding right now in our budget. It would have to come from free cash. That $25,000 that was voted at Article 10 was funded out of free cash.
Can I just ask a follow?
Quick
So
follow-up.
right now, we have $25,000 in the budget that town meeting voted on.
Correct.
On Monday. But from what I heard, sort of the expansion plan, right, sort of what's being hoped for.
That's right.
And what we hope, and all of us probably agree will be hoped for, is another $25,000 from the school and another, I thought I heard 50,000 from the town for that.
For the town side.
For the position. You
That's
add that
right.
all up, that's 100,000.
That's true. I just wanted to be very clear
Okay.
that Unified isn't looking for 100,000.
Okay, but there's $100,000 worth of expenses that have been laid out, good expenses, by the way.
Potential
And we have
expenses.
$25,000 of funding and a source that has been traditionally unreliable. Grateful that we have it, but we can't count on it year after year. That's kind of the...
I hear what you're saying. I would hesitate to use the term unreliable. I would think they're asynchronous payments. Burbank has reliably paid their rent to us over a period of years according to the formula within their lease. There are years that they cannot pay because they have to fill that contingency reserve, but they do come forward and pay when
I
those
stand
are
corrected.
available. Just so we're clear, yeah.
They are reliable, but there are some years the town doesn't get that.
That is
information.
correct.
That's what I meant. And,
No,
and that's
correct.
what's being asked to fund this program, is that extra amount, if
That
I
is-
understand correctly.
That is asked, we're asking to use those funds to fill a stabilization fund, and that town meeting can then appropriate monies from to support these programs.
So my general point, before I sit down, is I think this is wonderful. I want to see this happen. Everybody wants to see this happen. But I want to spend a little bit of time tonight talking about Plan B. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Laura Noonan, Precinct 4, and I'm also a member of the Recreation Committee. If you know me, or if you watch the Reading Recreation Committee meetings, or if you've read your... Sorry. Hold it. I'm not holding it. Hold on. Is that better? Okay. I'll start over. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Laura Noonan, Precinct 4, and I'm also a member of the Recreation Committee. If you know me, or if you watch the Reading Recreation Committee meetings, or if you read your town meeting emails, then you already know that I'm an advocate for adaptive recreation programming and that I fully support Article 14. What you may not know is just how great of a need there is in this town for adaptive programming, or how long Article 14 has been in the works. This was not just thrown together on a whim. First, let me address the need for adaptive programming. I'm aware of how easy it is to maybe not notice the need. If you have no need to look for adaptive recreation programming, then you might not notice that it's not available. One of my 3 children is disabled, and so I've been seeking to sign him up for adaptive recreation programming since he was about 2 years old. At that time, in 2018, the only adaptive program available in town was Special Skates. Let me say that again. The only adaptive recreation program in town was Special Skates. If you've ever taken a look at the Reading Recreation website in order to sign up for a program, then you know just how many wonderful programs are offered in this town for adults and children. Yet there was only one for disabled individuals, and it only runs 6 weeks a year, once a week. Special Skates runs every year, and this year there were 31 participants. This was the case until April of 2023, when Reading Rec first began to offer a program through Inclusion Sports. The town did not offer this program in 2024 and then brought it back in 2025. Currently, it's on the Recreation website offering adaptive soccer and baseball if you're between the ages of 2 and 7. If you're older than 7, you're out of luck. The website also lists Inclusion Sports as a summer offering if you're between the ages of 2 and 10. Older than 10, out of luck again. Since 2023, there have been 71 participants in this program through Reading Rec. It would be wonderful if there were more programs than just this one for these eager participants. Care to know how many general, not adaptive programs are currently listed on the Reading Rec website? I counted them. There are 86. 86 to 2. Does that sound equitable to you? As a mom looking to sign my son up for adaptive programming, and as a Reading Recreation Committee member advocating for adaptive programming for the many residents in this town that are seeking it, I'm continually told that there is no funding for these programs. Now, there has been some ARPA funds used to support adaptive programming, such as the swimming lessons at the Burbank YMCA, and also some special events that REC put on through a collaboration with the Reading Public Schools and the YMCA for special day trips. There were 7 such outings over the past 3 years to places like Canopy Lake Park or a Celtics or a Woo Sox game. But other than the ARPA funds, apparently no one rolled up their sleeves and put on their thinking caps to come up with how to fund adaptive programming. That is until July of 2024. On July 22nd, 2024, a member of the Burbank board came to the recreation meeting and explained that Mr. Nelson Burbank had wanted excess funds to be earmarked for recreational activities. He reported that since 2007-2008, the funds from the rink were contributed to free cash where they were needed at that time. But now the ice arena was looking to have Mr. Burbank's request honored. At that meeting, the REC committee passed a motion 6-0 asking the select board to create a mechanism for the excess proceeds from the Burbank Ice Authority to be earmarked to the Recreation Division for recreational purpose and use only. Then, on May 8th, 2025, Mr. Eric Gaffin, the then chair of the Recreation Committee, made an instructional motion at town meeting, requesting that the town manager and staff, inclusive of schools, identify and create a sustainable funding mechanism for expanding adaptive programming using existing town funds and future payments from the Burbank Ice Authority. Separately, please investigate how existing funds currently with the town can be allocated for additional recreational programming and facilities, which may include additional adaptive programming. Since Mr. Gaffin's instructional motion, the town has identified 2 separate needs that require funding: town adaptive therapeutic recreational programming and also unified sports teams at the Reading Public Schools. As such, Article 14 is being proposed. The Burbank funds are not meant to be the sole source of funding, but are meant to be a supplemental source to keep programs going and also to create a funding mechanism for them now so we don't have to wait on another budget cycle to try to get them funded. Programs offered through Reading Rec generate fees, which go into the revolving fund and would also be used. To those that are arguing that this funding mechanism is not appropriate and that it would be better off to be a budget line item, I say to you that a budget line item would not be protected. It would be on the chopping block, so to speak. However, having these funds placed into a stabilization fund ensures that these funds would always be available to be used for this intended purpose. Placing the funds into the stabilization fund is a way for our community to say, this matters to us. We want to fund these programs. Anything else is not a good look for Reading. The funding being proposed here is $50,000 to $100,000 out of a $155 million budget in order to make sure that our most marginalized population has access to adaptive recreation. This is about equity. It should be a no-brainer to approve this. This, unlike many other things we vote for here, will not raise our taxes. Despite multiple requests to find a sustainable way to fund these programs, nothing aside from ARPA funds, a temporary fix to a permanent problem, has been done prior to this proposal. If this body gets bogged down in discussing that there may be different funding options and this Article 14 does not pass, this opportunity will be lost and will not come back up because this marginalized population does not seem to be anyone's priority. If this Article 14 does not pass, more of the same will happen, which is nothing. No other options have ever been researched or proposed, and then these programs will not ever get guaranteed funding. I ask that you please join me in voting yes on Article 14.
Mr. Herrick?
Uh-oh, here I go. Steve Herrick, Precinct 8. I'm going to be the bad guy here, sorry. I'm going to read for a change. I usually speak extemporaneously, but there's a couple things I want to hit. I want to make sure I don't miss any. Can I, oh, sorry. I'll make this taller. Is that better? Perfect. You all want to hear this. All right. There's been a lot of sometimes heated discussion about Article 14, which the supporters of this article have repeatedly framed the topic as, are unified sports a worthy activity? To which the answer is, without fail, a resounding yes. And by the way, I think they are absolutely a worthy activity. Unfortunately, and I should avoid the internet, but opponents of this article have been characterized as uncaring or unsupportive of special needs residents. In fact, I believe if we did a show of hands right now in this auditorium, I would expect at least 90%, if not 100%, of town meeting supporters, town meeting here in this room supports the idea of unified and adaptive sports. The topic of debate here tonight is not whether Unified Sports is a good program worthy of support. I think we all agree on that. The topic of debate here is whether it is wise to codify a funding mechanism for this program, which is historically unreliable, takes control of spending decisions out of the hands of this body, and ties the hands of the town in relation to this program. We have talked a lot about the good of the program, but I want to talk about the funding source. The Burbank Ice Arena is an extremely spotty record of paying substantive rent to the town over the last 10 years. We heard that since 2010, I believe Jane told us that we've got, I think it was $800,000 over a 15-year period. So less than $50,000 a year. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think in recent years it's been less than that, although we had 1 or 2 years where we got some checks. The building is aging, the equipment is aging, and the first priority of the Burbank Ice Authority should be to maintain and improve this valuable town facility, which, remind you, is owned by the town of Reading, so that it continues to serve as a valuable asset for future generations. I might point out that in the near-term future, the financial situation at Burbank Arena stands to be potentially more tenuous as planned new facility is slated to open in a neighboring town, which will be competing for Burbank business. More fundamentally, this article proposes to abdicate spending decisions to an unelected authority who will be making choices as to whether to maintain the town's facility or fund this program. I think that is wildly inappropriate for several reasons. First is the override of town meeting's authority. Second is the instability inherent in this system. What if years when no rent is paid? Do we cancel the program? What if there's a bumper year occurs where a large payment is made to the town? Our hands are tied into potentially overfunding the program at the expense of many other funding needs. And I know these aren't huge dollars, but I think we're all thinking about the big O word right now, and that's coming. We have to think about that every time we make these decisions. Burbank rental payments, as our town manager pointed out, are basically a nice to have, something to throw into free cash. We need to have the power to control how much we want to fund this program for, so needs can be budgeted for without having to come back every year for emergency dollars for unmet needs. If the town meeting feels this is a program worthy of support, we should establish this as a budget line and fund it appropriately. Thank you to the Finance Committee for proposing the $25,000 line item. Let's face it, it's all going into one bucket. Money comes in, money goes out. This article changes absolutely nothing about our town finances, but it has the potential to inflict injustice on the Burbank Arena, the Unified Sports Program, and the integrity of this body's authority over the town budget. Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Murphy?
Just a clarifying point, Mr. Herrick, to what you said is that when the funds come in, they don't have to all be used in 1 year. They can sit and grow. So the programs can pull when they need them. You don't have to use the amount that comes in that year and use the same amount to go out. So we could put funds in and allow them to grow. Just wanted to clarify that.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Alicia Williams, Precinct 8. The fact that we, special ed parents, have to fight over this funding is frustrating. Special ed parents do nothing but fight. This vote really matters. Article 14 brings to light the most underserved, least seen population in our town. To that point, this town stopped funding understanding disabilities out of its budget years ago, and now it's privately funded. Where the town puts its money tells you its priorities. To say that this should be funded, but not this way, what way then? Who has this great idea? Show me the money in the budget to fund it. This was presented a year ago, and nobody has come forward in a year with a better idea. I personally would not like to sit here for the next 4 hours debating where we are going to get this money out of the budget. It's here, right now. We just have to say yes. These children have very little in their lives but therapy and doctor's appointments. They have few friends and struggle daily just to get by. I would venture to guess that most people in this room have never been asked the soul-crushing question, "Mom, why can't I play?" Try to explain to a child that the kids on the team play faster and harder and don't have patience to their slow, clumsy, and often delayed reactions doesn't translate to a child who doesn't see competition. They see fun. Unified Sports in Reading only includes basketball and strength training at the high school and bocce and basketball in the middle school. There is nothing at the elementary school level, nothing. In this town, we have one person who leads the charge, Tara Herlihy. Thank you, Tara, for all you do for these kids. If we actually set up these funds, think of what else is possible in our town. If you want to find an activity your child can participate in, you have to drive all the way to Burlington and hope that there's room for a non-resident to join, or Andover to join a wait list. If you drive to another town to join an adaptive program, the children play sports with the kids are not familiar to them. Have you ever tried to advocate for your typical child to be on the same team as their best friend? Then you know how important it is to have familiarity within the group. Why would we do this to kids? It spikes anxiety and makes the experience undesirable. In-town, inclusive, adaptive sports gives kids purpose, drive, and motivation. They help with coordination, team building, and social skills. They let kids feel like they belong in the community. Imagine a future where any one of us is suddenly disabled, a fall, a car accident, an unexpected illness. We could all find ourselves needing adaptive sports one day. The children who are currently disabled will grow into adults who will require ongoing support beyond the school years. Adaptive sports provides a bridge. Some members of the Burbank community are already champions for these children, working tirelessly to create inclusive opportunities. One of these people sees this population and does his best to include them, making space for them on the high school track team, coming to games, buying them sweatshirts for unified basketball, giving them jobs at SNL to feel included when they can't play and acknowledge them in public, giving their life purpose. Inclusion of kids in Reading sports doesn't happen. You can't join a hockey team or field hockey team or a lacrosse team. It's not set up to include the kids who are different. On the other hand, there are amazing parents in this town who do try to include kids, knowing there is a huge gap. Reading Little League, to name one. Thank you to all the people who made this dream of inclusion sports an actual reality in our town, and thank you to the Rec Committee and Eric Gaffin for bringing this instructional motion forward. This vote should be unanimous. This vote matters. If you want to talk about inclusion, this is where you put your money. Together, we can start to create a community where every child feels valued, included, and empowered. Please support Article 14. Thank you.
Mr. Gregory?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Andrew Gregory, Precinct 2. I just have a couple of questions. Specifically, what advantages does this type of funding source offer the town that a standard budget line item doesn't?
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Can you rephrase the question, please?
Just like
Or
what
repeat it?
advantages do we as a town get from this type of funding source as opposed to just a line item in our budget?
So during the discussion with Article 10, you saw the free cash usage at the end of FY25 will be level with the Finance Committee recommended reserves. So we can put a line item in, but we can't do that right now. So it's a future conversation about how we want to fund these programs. We can discuss it as something that would be part of an override conversation. What this article does, what these stabilizations do, is create something of a savings account for these two purposes that allow us to put funds that were not previously allocated for anything into reserve, and then we can draw on them as needed. Town meeting decides to allocate those funds to support these programs. So as Ms. Murphy said earlier, in a year where rent payments are higher from Burbank, that doesn't mean you would spend to that level. You would just you would draw a portion to support the programs that would be sustainable.
Gotcha, and the remainder would go to free cash? Is that what you're saying?
And the remainder would go to free cash. Whatever doesn't go into the stabilization goes to free cash, correct.
Gotcha. Are there any other advantages that you get aside from a fluctuating amount of money? So it seems like you just don't necessarily
It's a reserve.
know.
So it's the rent payment is a fluctuating amount of money. The stabilization fund is a way that you can save that money for future use.
Gotcha, but could, if rent payments were not coming through, end up lower than the money required to run the programs?
I'm sorry?
If the rent payments were not coming through and that fund diminished, would there be an instance in which there was no money to fund these programs?
If the town relied solely on the stabilization funds to fund the programs, then you could find yourself in that position.
And
That's not the intention, I don't think, of anybody. So
definitely don't want that to be
Correct.
the type of situation we're in. Just thinking for edge cases wherein, something happens at, God forbid, at the Burbank Ice Arena and we lose those rent payments for several years. Do we then lose all of our funding for, or not all of it, but a portion of our funding for Unified and Adaptive Sports?
you would lose the funding that goes into the stabilization fund. We don't have a line item for these sports. We have to build that in. So this might be step one way to consider that, in addition to what's being done. The
Gotcha.
current funding, town meeting supported a community priority, so there is that $25,000 in there for unified sports. We have not built in a budget for FY28 yet, so we have not put in a line item for therapeutic recreational sports.
Gotcha. So if we were to say next year, say, set for 50,000 or 100,000 in that specific line item, would this funding mechanism then become unnecessary?
I wouldn't.
It is a stabilization fund, correct? So in case they needed to spend more than 100,000.
I wouldn't say it's unnecessary. I would say that this is a sustainable way to utilize Burbank funds that we might be able to appropriate to a source that is needed in this community.
Gotcha. And then one other question is, are there any other programs here in Reading with this type of funding model?
No, I don't believe so. We have a number of trust funds in town. We have a trust fund committee, and we have various other boards that can control trust funds. And so we draw on those trust funds from time to time as well, as appropriate to support a variety of programs in town. For example, our Lifeline program that we offer to seniors at home, so the Fall Assist, emergency call program, is funded through one of those trust funds. So we do provide transportation to elders through trust fund monies. So there are a number of programs that we offer through trust funds, and then there's sort of, occasional programs that we offer through them.
Gotcha. So
those
nothing
funds are not
specifically-
controlled by town meeting. This one would be.
Gotcha. So nothing specifically in this funding model. This would be the first program to be funded this way.
I would defer to our CFO. Is that correct? Yeah, it's the only one we know of.
Okay.
It would be, correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, on the other side.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Kevin Lucy, Precinct 1. I'd like to start off by thanking Coach Hurley for everything that she does for our children. So from what I understand, the percentage of the money coming from Burbank will be split between unified sports at the school level and adaptive sports on the town side. Some town meeting members might not know that Burbank funding comes primarily from youth hockey, figure skating, public skating, open ice, and pickup hockey leagues. I'll start over. So some town meeting members might not know that the Burbank funding comes primarily from youth hockey, figure skating, public skating, open ice, and adult pickup leagues. Under this article, Burbank would give its excess revenue from its sports and youth programs and give it back to children with various disabilities so that they can also participate in sports in our town. Without it, there is nothing for these kids. As a parent of a child with disabilities, I'd like to speak about unified sports. I could bare my soul to this entire room about the difficulties, the adversities, the heartache, the sleepless nights that come with simply wanting acceptance and happiness for our children. But I don't feel like I should have to do that. What I do want to talk about is how important this is to us and to them. Unified basketball helps fill the void that often appears as the children grow, and the differences between typical and non-typical peers become more apparent. The organized sports that they once played become too competitive. The birthday parties fade away. And many of these kids are left sitting in their bedrooms longing for friendships. Unified sports gives that sense of connection back to these kids. Watching my child participate in unified sports, the joy, the excitement, the happiness, the camaraderie they experience as part of a team is something that truly means the world to them and to us as parents. Our kids are finally included in a way that isn't too difficult for them. Make no mistake about the friendships these programs help build. It teaches flexibility when games don't go their way, the excitement of winning, and the understanding that they don't always win, and that's okay. This article does not increase taxes. The suggestions or inferences that Reading Rec should fund this have a fundamental flaw of not being protected from budget cuts. In tight fiscal times, if the Reading Rec budget were to be cut, the funding would be lost. The suggestion that Burbank could have weaker years is also flawed. I can assure you Reading is a vibrant hockey community. I kind of lost myself, but some money right now for this better program is better than no money at all. We have benefited from an amazing donor and a commitment from this school side for this year. The school budget cannot absorb that long term. And if you start trying to share a piece of the athletic budget, you are pitting students with disabilities against the athletic budget, and no one wins. Unified Sports is the only program in the Reading Public School system or the town of Reading that is fully inclusive across every segment of society: race, gender, socioeconomic ability, and all learning and physical abilities. It brings typical students together with children of various disabilities for practices and games. Typical students are a vital part of this program as well, learning about differences and in many cases forming friendships they might not otherwise have. The typical students help facilitate practices and games and in return receive community service hours. There is no segment of our population more deserving of a full and equal school experience than these children. They may never win a state championship, but we owe it to them as parents and as a community to give them every opportunity to be champions in life. This plan accomplishes that without raising taxes for the people of this town. If you believe these children deserve the same high school experience as their peers, I ask you, please join me in voting for our children. Thank you.
Ms. Binder?
Angela Binder, Precinct 5. My medical history is complicated. I have a rare neurological movement disorder and spent much of my childhood and teen years in and out of hospitals, wearing leg braces and using crutches, in a neck brace, and for a while in a wheelchair. When I started first grade, I could not attend the school my older brother and sister attended because it was built in 2 stories and I couldn't walk upstairs. So I went to the school across town, which was a single story. I was bused in one of those smaller buses that some kids back then referred to as a special kids bus. I actually know what it's like to be excluded from activities my classmates enjoyed because of my severe physical limitations. It can be isolating and painful. I fully support spending tax dollars to provide opportunities for kids who have varying abilities, full stop. However, I will be voting against Article 14 because it is our job to oversee the budget. Removing an undetermined amount of money from free cash to put it into these stabilization funds is a bad idea. A warrant article would need to go to town meeting each year for approval anytime any money is spent. Setting up community priorities is a much less cumbersome process to grow programs. Burbank rent money is a good infusion to our free cash, not one counted on in some years when excise tax or other revenue is low. And that free cash could be transferred to unified sports or adaptive programming for extra funds in addition to community priorities-based budget funding. One can be in favor of these programs and still vote against this article. We are being asked to fund these programs through Burbank Rent because it was a requirement by the Burbank Arena Board to allow the town to use the lot behind the arena for pickleball parking, which it had already agreed to. Article 14's history is also complicated, and it did not originate with the instructional motion, but goes back several years to a Burbank Ice Arena board member, going to the Recreation Committee, to the Select Board, speaking to residents, stating incorrectly that rent payments from Burbank Arena to the town were originally intended to be used exclusively for recreational projects. Not true. In July 2024, at a public recreation committee meeting, a Burbank board member stated that Nelson Burbank had, quote, a verbal agreement that if there were ever excess proceeds from the arena, that they would be earmarked for recreational activities, end quote. Peter Heckenblackner, Reading's town manager for 26 years, who worked with Mr. Burbank on the ice arena and the YMCA, absolutely refutes this assertion. Regarding an agreement that funds go to recreation, Peter stated 2 weeks ago, quote, "That is not correct. That is a Burbank board member trying to frankly impose his desire into a business relationship with Nelson that I had for a number of years, and that is absolutely not the case," end quote. Furthermore, he stated that Nelson would not have imposed himself, would not have asked that of him. The rent payment was always to go into the general fund. He said that he and Nelson Burbank were very respectful of each other's roles. In July 2024, at a select board meeting, the same select board designee to the Burbank board asked the select board to direct Burbank rent payments to recreation, stating, quote, "It would be really great if earmarked profits from the rink went to recreational activities instead of just going into the general fund. People could say, hey, we resurfaced the tennis courts or fixed a playground. It's just nicer to see. Wouldn't we all like to be able to direct our tax dollars in the same way?" At an August 2024 Recreation Committee meeting, in another discussion about how best to direct these payments towards recreational uses, a Recreation Committee member stated, quote, "I think if you said that the money should be earmarked for adaptive programming, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who's going to object to that," end quote. A year ago, in April 2025, the Board of Directors of the Reading Ice Arena Authority met, and the following is from the minutes of their meeting, legally obtained. There was, quote, "a discussion of the town of Reading's use of Burbank Arena surplus provided as lease payments," end quote. Further down, a borough member, quote, "cited the new unified sports program in the Middlesex High School League as an example of where he would like to see the money spent. The board acknowledges they have no way to control the spending of the lease payments," end quote. Last year, when the superintendent asked about using Burbank funds for unified sports, he was told that it wasn't an appropriate funding source and the school department could not have the Burbank funds. In the summer of 2025, CFO Sharon Engstrom and Town Council Ivor Freed researched the Burbank account and found no evidence that the money was ever intended to support recreation exclusively. They dissolved the account, and now all Burbank rent payments go directly into free cash to support the general fund needs, as was always the intent, according to the former town manager who negotiated the contract with Nelson Burbank. Around the same time last summer, the town was negotiating a shared parking agreement with the Burbank Board for use of space behind the arena and recal parking. This was to be an easy agreement, town officials stated, until the Burbank Board decided they would only agree to pickleball parking if the town agreed to put this article directing funding to unified sports before town meeting, according to former town manager Matt Cornelis. Article 14 is on the warrant not because of an instructional motion, but because a false narrative has been pushed for several years that Burbank rent payments should be a resource only for recreational activities and facilities, and a hunch that town meeting members wouldn't have the courage to say no if the money was to help kids with differing abilities. Peter Heckenblackner also stated, quote, "If you're invoking the name of Nelson Burbank, why is it the business of the Burbank Arena where the money goes as long as the arena is protected? Their business is to run an arena and to make sure that that arena building is properly taken care of. That is why there's never been a set amount for rent payments, to protect the arena." On October 2nd, 2025, the Select Board rep to the Burbank Board, who's also a unified sports coach and donor to the school department and the owner of a company which offers recreational programs in the Reading Public Schools and adaptive programming in other districts, appeared before the school committee and stated, quote, "The reason I'm here is because I'm actually your representative on the Burbank Arena and we've been working with the town. I'm pleased to announce that we've come to an agreement. It needs to be approved by the Select Board as well as town meeting, where 50% of the income is going to go to the Unified Sports Program." He received a round of applause for this attempt to direct these funds from free cash to the school department outside of the normal budget process. He made this announcement before the Select Board was even told about the agreement. Article 14 is what the Burbank Board required and what former town manager Matt Cornelis agreed to. We do not have to pass this article. We have recognized the need. We added $25K to the budget Thursday for unified sports and made it a community priority, so it is built into the base budget and will increase every year. The town is planning to hire a therapeutic counselor in the rec department. ARPA money was spent. It has been stated that Reading is one of the best unified sports programs in eastern Massachusetts. No one is disputing the merits of these programs, and I don't doubt the town's commitment to them, but we should not establish these stabilization funds accounts. I will be voting no on this. I do appreciate all of this has come to add more light to what these wonderful programs are, and I do hope that we continue to fund them. In the 13 seconds I have left, Ms. Engstrom, can you speak a little bit about, I know that you spoke at the FinCom meeting. I know that you feel that this is not the best way to fund this. There's difficult, you have talked about a preference for funding it through community priorities and how that money can grow year after year, how more money can be added to it, how it is not a difficult mechanism. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Ms. Engstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So typically, when we have something that is not built into the budget and is new that we want to add, that is why we do it. We do a community priority to add something into the baseline that wasn't there before. So that would be my default, to always add a community priority, because then it would be there in the base for each year. This sounded to me like a program that people really wanted to see happen right away, and knowing the history of the rent payments, where, you know, one year you could get, I want to say in 2024, we got $113,000 from Burbank, and in 2025, we got zero. And this year, we got zero. So even if this was approved, I wouldn't have any money to put in it. And it's a worthy cause. It's a very good thing for us to be putting our money towards, and that's why I leaned more towards the community priority, so that there would be baseline money within the operating budget. There's no harm in having a stabilization fund, but it can't be the sole source if you don't know how much is coming.
And historically...
Ms. Binder, your time is up. Are you?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Ms. Doctor.
Nancy Doctor, Precinct 1. I support Unified. I support adaptive. I do not support Article 14. My critique is about funding. I have asked both the school and the town what were the other funding options, what was the rationale for them not being put forward. No response. I have asked who was in the room when Article 14 was hatched. No response. I have specifically asked the school department if they had contacted the town accountant in terms of the best funding option with the least impact on taxpayers. I have had no response. This is even more puzzling to me. The school department wants to continue to partially fund a program, but they want the rest of the funding to come from someplace else, but they want to stay in control of it. I don't know of any other program that we do that. I think if the school department wants to control it, we need to figure out how to give the school department that money. If we want to take it and put it under rec, then the rec should control it. I don't know the best funding source, but Article 14 is denying us the opportunity to look at all the funding options. I don't know if it should be part of something like Samantha's Harvest, that it should be grants and sponsorships and fundraising. I don't know if it should look like the Coolidge Olympia team. I don't know, but Article 14 is denying us that opportunity to debate what's in the best interest. And I want to stop calling it Burbank money. It's not Burbank money, it's taxpayer money. That's what we're talking about, taxpayer money. And the reality is, it is up to town meeting to decide how to use taxpayer money, not the Burbank Board of Directors. They're not donating part of their salaries to Unified. They're donating taxpayer money and deciding what to do with it. That's what we do. There is funding in place for the next year for Unified. The instructional motion was to come back and give us all the funding options. I don't know what the funding options are. I've gotten one suggestion, and that was to use in lieu of rent for Burbank, if, you know, the town accountant has given me 15 years of, you know, again, what they've have given back to the town, and it fluctuates. And, you know, it was referenced before. I have no idea what that's going to look like with an aging infrastructure and with North Reading building their own ice arena. But I would like this to be voted against, tabled, whatever. Come back next year and give us all the options so we can have a transparent, open, and honest discussion how to fund a very valuable program that everyone here supports. But I'm going to vote against Article 14.
Mr. Dardino?
Phil Dardino, Precinct 3. I find the money argument to be a little odd. And, you know, I was president of Little League for 15 years. If I had more money, I spent more money. If I had less money, I spent less money. And that's what this group will do. If they get more money, they'll spend it. If they don't, they won't. To say I am not in favor of this because it's an uneven funding, I don't get that. It's all uneven funding. It's everyone, every department in the town of Reading does exactly the same thing. One year they get more money, they spend more money. One year they get less money, they spend less money. But not only that, but this group has recognized your issue. And I think the people who are saying this aren't listening, didn't listen to them. These people are saying, this isn't the only source of revenue. This isn't what we're going to rely on alone. We're going to go out and we're going to seek grants. We're going to go out and we're going to seek donations. We're going to go out and we're going to raise money. I was president of the league. I sold ads that we hung up on the field, on the fences, to raise money for Little League because I was short money. That's what this town does. This town is short money some year. This is a year they don't have enough money. This is a year town of Reading didn't have enough money because the costs raised, healthcare raised, a lot of the costs that were in our budget we just passed raised. But what did they do? They cut. They cut expenses. They cut spending. And that's what this group will do. They get less money from Burbank, they'll cut their spending because they have to. Or they'll come back to us and say, hey, guys, can you give me another $10,000? Can I get another $15,000? That's what we all do. This whole town of Reading, the whole system of government throughout the state of Massachusetts is based on this idea. There's nothing different here. I see nothing different here. I see a choice, either you like this program and you say yes, or you don't like the program and you say no. But to do it for money, it just makes no sense to me. Money's like this all the time. All the time. It's like this in your own home. Some weeks are better than others. Some months are better than others. And when they're better than others, you spend more. And when they're not better than others, you spend less. Well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Ms. Janowski.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Karen Janowski, Precinct 2. I'm encouraged to hear that there seems to be unanimous support for the unified and adaptive sports programming. I am very discouraged to hear that that there are people who are outright saying no to this program. We heard an excellent presentation from Tara Herlihy and from our superintendent. We heard from our town manager about the importance of this. And I think I'm very concerned that we are kicking the can down the road again. This is a population that needs to be represented and heard. We need to show support. We are historically neglecting and overlooking this, our population of children and adults with disabilities. And one of the things is I do want to talk about the historical context. In the past, we've had Challenger baseball many, many years ago, but we no longer have Challenger baseball. It was a very good program for some of our younger learners who had physical disabilities and other types of disabilities. We also, it's been mentioned that we had, that the school department funded Understanding Disabilities. That is no longer funded through the school. And I'm very concerned that this could end up, we can call it a community priority, but in a few years, who knows, we might have different leadership. We might, if the override fails or whatever, this could be one of the programs that's cut. And this has to be a priority. And I am very concerned that we are kicking the can down the road without offering another option. I'm not hearing that this is the only way that the stabilization fund will be, but that these adaptive sports programs will be funded, but it certainly is a starting place, and I don't want to lose this opportunity. It's a creative and innovative solution, and I applaud that, and I'm very grateful that Eric Gaffin presented it a year ago, and I have not heard any other creative option that has allowed us to fund this. This is a priority for us as a community. We need to show that we care about equity and inclusion, and that all of our members of our community are welcomed, that we provide the programs that they need. Thank you.
On this side.
Excuse me. Adi Bengali, Precinct 3 Associate Board of Health member. Before I start, I do want to acknowledge and appreciate the parents who stepped up today to tell their stories. I think it takes a special kind of courage and vulnerability to come true about these situations, open your heart, and I think those kids are really, really lucky to have parents who will speak for their cause, and I applaud that. I think I want to start by saying that it's very heartening, at least from where I stand, to see a broad support for the cause of this program, right? I think for the 2 years I've been on the town meeting, I have seen lots of disagreements, but it seems like for some of these principles, we do tend to come together, and we are kind of moving in that right direction. Yes, this makes sense. This is something we should fund for. And so in a room that disagrees a lot, I think this principle being aligned on matters a lot, and I want to give props to the town of Reading and its community for that. Adaptive programming serves residents who cannot advocate loudly for themselves, and I don't think I need to establish the need and cause there. I'd like to thank Coach there, the school committee, everyone who came there. It is a must-do. People whose needs are real, and these voices are typically the quietest and the most silent when it comes to budget conversation. So by having this article here today, we are creating basically a firewall or an assured funding mechanism when times get tough, and that we ensure that these populations do not stay underserved, and there is always a go-to funding mechanism for that. So by offering that structural commitment there, I think the town is doing a fantastic thing. I just hope, though, that the principle does not only belong to this program. The residents that are served by our elder services, mental health resources, library accesses, and programs that serve families without alternatives share that same quiet voice. They too depend on the town deciding before and when the pressure arrives for budget that they are worth protecting. So I am a hard yes on Article 14. The logic that makes Article 14 right tonight, that we build the wall before the storm, not during it, is the same logic that should guide our future conversations. I love when someone says inclusion begins here. I hope we stay true to that principle when these tough decisions are faced by the town for protecting our vulnerable communities. So I hope everyone votes yes. Thank you.
Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I would like to make a motion. May I go ahead and make this?
Yes.
I move to amend Section 1 of Article 14 to as follows. To insert after the word adaptive, the words and inclusive, and to insert after programming, the words including unified sports. Mr. Moderator, this is a small clarification amendment. Unified sports doesn't always fit neatly into the adaptive programming definition. You've heard many members use those two terms interchangeably tonight, but unified sports is not adaptive programming. So I think this helps make sure that the language reflects how these programs are actually delivered. It does not change the structure or the intent of the article.
Second, we heard a second. Ms. Freed, do you have a comment? Oh, yes. Oh, it's in the email, but here it is. Yep. And I heard a second, okay. Do you have more comments, or I'm going to open up the floor to discussion on the proposed amendment right now, unless you have another More comments? No, all set. Okay, I will come back to the order we had before when we go back to the main motion. But right now, we're speaking of the proposed amendment. Is there discussion on that? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand. Those opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, we come back to our, let's see, I believe Ms.
Good evening. Melissa Murphy, Precinct 8 and Chair of the Select Board. So I just wanted to make a couple notes. I don't want to repeat what other people have said. Just a couple things is that I really truly believe we would not be here having this long drawn-out conversation if the funding source wasn't Burbank. And there's been some bad blood over the last couple years, and I think that is the real reason why we have this discussion ongoing tonight. The other thing I wanted to point out is that we've heard about community priorities, which, you know, is fantastic, and I love that we do that. But the reality is that I sat in a select board retreat over on this weekend, Saturday, and we heard our town CFO say the minimum override number is about $7.7 million. Everyone think about that for a second. If that does not pass, there are going to be cuts across the board, and that includes community priorities. When these funds are put in as community priorities, they just go to the school department or they go to the town side rec. And those are the programs that are going to get cut. It's inevitable. We are not going to fire teachers over programs like this. We are not going to fire staff in our town over programs like this. And everyone needs to remember that. The one thing that's been repeated, and everyone needs to also remember, is that this is not the only funding source. This is just to help out. We would love to put more money. I think everyone in this room would love to put more money. We don't have it. We do not have the money to put to these programs right now. I hope someday we do and we can dissolve these stabilization funds. And we don't need to pull from this, but we do not have it. We need to try to keep these programs going for these children or create the programs on the town side for not only the children, the young adults, the adults that could use these adaptive programs. A couple other things I just wanted to mention is that I think I kind of actually covered it all. So I just need everyone to remember that this is not the only funding source. Someday I hope we can put more money than we have for $50,000 on the school side, but right now we can't. And with the override looming and our financial situation, as many other towns are in, this just protects a little piece of that pie for these kids, families, young adults. Thank you.
Mr. Carnahan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Oh, sorry. I did not need to get that close to the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Carnahan, Precinct 7, Finance Committee member. So several different points here I'd like to make. First, I would like to emphasize that Article 14 does not make any money available for adaptive and unified sports that was not already available for adaptive and unified sports. It takes money that is under the control of town meeting and puts it under the control of town meeting. There are no new donations. No one is picking up the tab. That's a phrase I saw in discussions online, which is curious because it's the town's money either way. With or without Article 14, adding $50,000 to fund these programs means either raising taxes by $50,000 or cutting $50,000 somewhere else. It's still taxpayers' money either way, and this body decides how it's spent. Second, I've heard some questions and comparisons between the proposed stabilization funds and the Community Preservation Act, and so I figured I should comment on that one. It is true that both hold funds that are controlled by town meeting and that are dedicated for purposes that the residents of this town value highly. However, the key difference for me is the state partial matching funds offered under the CPA. If the CPA was not going to bring in those additional funds, I would not support it. It would just be unnecessary administrative complexity. It might even tie up funds in ways that would make it harder for town meeting to address some future emergency. Third, I've gotten questions because the amendment to the fiscal year 27 budget the Finance Committee made was only for the unified sports in the schools. I don't know if this has come up here, but my understanding is that the proposal for expanding adaptive sports in rec is to be hosted at ReCal, which will be opening around the beginning of fiscal year 28. So I am enthusiastically looking forward to supporting additions to the rec department budget to fund those programs in the fiscal year 28 budget. Fourth, I'm concerned with the precedent this article would set. I mean, different people benefit from different town services. We have different needs. The way this all works is that we, the residents of Reading, are all in this together. Whether we're seniors or parents of students or whatever, active users of rec programs, active users of the town forest, you name it. If we start fencing off pools of money for each group of people that need services in the town, we start setting neighbors in opposition to each other. We've all heard about the need for an override, and when that happens, I want us all working together to get that override passed. I do not want anyone to just give up on the override and try to fence off funds for their particular needs. Finally, most importantly, I want to address the real problem that I see behind Article 14. Many people have reached out to tell me these programs have long been neglected. This makes me really sad and angry because I'm on the Finance Committee and no one has come to us with a proposal to fund these programs. The Finance Committee had to ask town staff, hey, can we add money for this this year? And the answer was yes, which is great. We voted for it last week, and that's wonderful. But what happened? I am sure that parents have asked town staff for these programs repeatedly. I am sure that town staff has said no because they were under pressure from the select board and from town meeting to cut whatever spending they can. I appreciate that town staff are trying to do their jobs in the way that they think we want them to. However, at the end of the day, these are our tax dollars, yours and mine. If there's broad support for funding these programs, we should just fund them. Somehow the fact that most people in this room, maybe everyone in this room at this point, want to fund these programs was lost. I don't know how that happened, but I do want to fix that. I do wonder if we need to revisit the structure of the financial forums or some other part of the budget process to make sure that we get this resident input sooner. I'm hearing people say, we've been bringing this up forever, and I didn't hear about it. Like, what the heck? Yeah, we don't need a bunch of special purpose accounts. We just need to fund the programs that our fellow residents need in the budget. So I will not be voting for the complexity of Article 14. I will be voting enthusiastically to fund unified and adaptive sports programs. I did vote for it in the FY27 budget. I'll vote for it in the FY28 budget and beyond. Thank you.
Yes, back over on this side.
Hi, my name is Maria. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Maria Salvatelli, Precinct 6. I'm just going to lower this. I'm short, sorry. I have to say that everything that he just said was part of the things that I was going to say. I am a parent of a neurodiverse student. I wish that more things were offered at Reading, both in the school system as well as recreation. It would have been very nice to have that as she was growing up. As she's still in high school, she does have opportunities, but it would be nice for the Reading system to be able to address these before even this conversation is happening. My question to you is that it looks like to me, I'm new to town meeting, and I apologize if I'm not sure if this is the correct question to ask, but as an outside observer looking at these two components, it says 50% of the rental payments received from the lease of the Burbank Ice Arena in both of those sections. I'm trying to understand, is that just saying that a business or a leasee can just say, I want to allocate these funds to this particular item? And can other businesses do that? Is this setting a precedence to do that? And also, I'd like to find out a little bit more, if someone can elaborate on how that is to be, and if that is even something that can happen in a town where a business can allocate their lease or their rent to allocate it to something that specifically they want to do. I'd like to understand that a little bit more. And then also, I understand that the Finance Committee was a split, and I'd like to understand a little bit more about why it was saying that the no said no, so we can understand the finances behind that a little bit more.
Ms. Freed?
Thank you. So to answer your first question, the payments that Burbank makes comes in under General Law, Chapter 40, Section 3, into the general fund. And that's where they live right now, and they become certified fee cash.
an opportunity exists under General Law Chapter 55 where you can take those funds from a dedicated revenue source and allocate them to a stabilization fund. So that's what we're considering tonight. Do we want to take a revenue source that we have, these lease payments, and dedicate them to a specific account? And sorry,
Where would they have gone otherwise?
they would go to the general fund.
And what would the general fund fund? Everything. So you're saying that you're taking it from one area and putting it to another.
That's a question
Allocating it.
that's a question for this body. Do you want to take a revenue source that you have and dedicate it to a specific purpose and have those funds be reserved for a specific purpose? Stabilization funds cannot be expended absent town meeting authority. So when you want to use those funds for that specific purpose, sorry, I'm losing my voice, you would need to come back to town meeting to get an appropriation. It used to have to be a 2/3 vote, now it's a majority vote to appropriate funds out of a special purpose stabilization fund.
Thank you.
Mr. Wise?
You done?
I didn't know if someone wanted to answer the other part of that, is finance.
Oh, excuse me, okay.
I
Mr.
think you
Carnahan?
started, actually.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think we just heard from me. I was one of the 4 no votes. I don't know if anyone else from the committee would like to speak, but
You were, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. You were a
oh,
yes
sorry.
vote?
I was one of the 4 no votes.
No votes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you? I'll let you both speak. Want to have a yes vote, and then we'll come back to Emily. Ms. Downing?
So Maria, I'm Mary Ann Downing, Precinct 4, and I was one of the yes votes. And, we had a discussion that's proportionate to what we had here. We spent more than an hour talking about it. And my view of why this was okay, it actually relates to something I could probably ask Ivrea, but I was focused that we don't have any budget item, and people talked about community priority, but I don't know if this is an Ivrea or Sharon question. I don't think we can have a community priority every single year, right? Like, eventually it has to move to something. Have we ever had a community priority that just lasts for years and years and years, and that's how we fund it? Yet we have? Okay, because it didn't strike me as full day K was only for 3 or 4 years, though. It wasn't for.
Full day K is ended.
Okay. So I guess just what allowed me to say yes, though, is I felt nothing was going to be automatic, and there was still a lot of flexibility left to the town each year, as Ivrea just explained, that we could decide to appropriate it, that we in 3 years we could stop it. I actually, in FinCom, even though I voted yes, I wondered if we could have a cap, just like when we approved that revolving account for special ed. So I just felt like this was an option that gave the town a lot of flexibility. And it was taking a town recreation asset, using it for a recreation purpose. And as a side note, when I read the select board lease with Burbank, it felt like there was a loophole that even though Burbank wanted us to create this fund, they're still going to make rent payments to us whether or not we approve this article, correct? Okay, so I just want this board to understand that Burbank was not holding parking over our heads, that we're still going to get even if I hope the article passes. If it doesn't, we will still get our rent payment, we will still get our parking. But just as a yes vote, I thought that this offered the town flexibility and used a recreational asset we own for an underserved population recreation purpose. And I'll allow another no or yes to speak if you want to know any more.
Ms. Sisson, did you want to comment?
Sure. Emily Sisson, Precinct 2, also Finance Committee. And since you're new, I also spent like a decade on rec committees, so this stuff is near and dear to my heart, and I was still a no vote at FinCom. Opposing something that, ostensibly it feels like I'd be opposing this program by opposing this article feels really wrong in my rec soul. So But, to me, the stabilization funds are, as Ms. Angstrom said, kind of a way to, or maybe Ms. Wellman said, a savings account, a rainy day fund for those big, unexpected, fluctuating expenses. And these kids aren't rainy day kids. These kids are kids that deserve funding. And as Mr. Carnahan said, we've been hearing like, well, it's never been in the budget. And that's no fault of town staff. That's because for 5 years or more, we've been saying level service budget, do more with less. And so, we have obligations to provide the education to our children, the general education, special education. We have accommodated costs. We have things that come first, so they've been prioritizing those things. And I agree with Mr. Carnahan, and we talked about it at FinCom too. In the next year's budgeting process, we'd love to see staff come forward with what is the ideal budget, what is the dollar, and how do we reconcile those two things? So for me, the big thing was, we collected no money from Burbank last year owing to some capital expenses or things that they had going on. And so to me, we make this stabilization fund. If we don't get rent, nothing goes in. The next opportunity we have to disperse that is November town meeting. If nothing goes in, then there's still no money. And so that's why the FinCom wanted to put that $25,000 into the community priority or directly into the budget. And the reason we put numbers in for unified sports through the school program was because we had a dollar amount to attach to that. That was the number we had heard would substantially impact the program in a positive way. On the town side, we didn't add anything, and I think the direct quote was from Mr. Ross, we don't know the number, because town staff has never had an opportunity to tell us what is the budget, what is the scope, what does this look like, and so for us to insert a number into this year's budget would have been a best guess. So going forward, as Mr. Carnahan said, the intent is to add that therapeutic rep so that Mr. Sullivan and Ed, whose last name escapes me, that staff of 2 in rec, can have somebody with the special expertise to put together the programs these children deserve, these young adults deserve, these adults in our community deserve. So I think those were all my things, and now I can get out of line, so thanks for letting me skip. I really appreciate the intent here. I want to support these programs. They deserve all the money that we can afford to give them through the operating budget. I have slight concerns about what Mr. Carnahan said, starting to fence off special interests like our elder services. They got all their ARPA funds cuts too. Are we going to have an elder services stabilization fund pop up next time? We're all in this together. This Burbank money goes directly to the general fund. The general fund funds our stuff. We can work together to make sure that our residents, especially our underserved residents, are getting their due. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wellman, did you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, really briefly. We've heard a number of comments about how we have not received any money from Burbank last year or this current fiscal year. I just want to correct the record for since 2010, and I'm just going to read the numbers into the record. In 2010, it was $95,000. In 2011, it was $100,000. In 2012, there was no payment.
Do you have that available?
I can send it to Jackie, but it's going to take a minute.
Okay, I'll let you continue while we do that.
Thank you. Jackie? Yeah, I don't think I can. No. Now I've just locked up my computer, so that's exciting. Okay. It doesn't like the network here, evidently.
Point of order.
At any rate,
Sorry. Point of order.
Point of order?
Dan Malone, Precinct 6. Are we still waiting for an amendment in the wings, or is that?
I think it's coming up in a couple more people.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, I cannot send this to Jackie?
so
I have
go
to
ahead and
not
read
put
it,
it up.
yeah.
I can read it into the record, and you can type it below the
Yeah.
agenda. You want to do that?
But just go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In 2013, it was $125,000. In 2014, it was $68,654. In 2015, sorry, what? Did I just do it again? What did I do?
Just read
Going
it.
too fast.
Just read it.
Just read it. It's, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator?
Just read it. That's
Just read
fine.
it,
I don't-
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was I?
2015.
2015, again, was $163,579. In 2016, there was no payment. In 2017, it was $58,269. In 2018, it was $104,125. In 2019, it was $41,639. In 2020, it was $86,321. In 2021, it was $14,878 following COVID. In 2022, it was $22,921. In 2023, it was $14,849. In 2024, it was $113,966. I just want the record to be clear. It's a very consistent, it averages out to $63,075 per annum on average, and you can see the variation that we receive. I think it's important for people to understand in that period of time, since 2010, there have only been 4 years where the town did not receive a payment, and that was because Burbank had to do their capital improvements in their building, and that's why there's no cost to the town to maintain this building. Secondly, there's been some conversation about build the program through recreation before funding it, and I understand that desire. Because FY28 is so concerning, we've brought this before town meeting so that there is a funding source that we can build from. If you have several years of these large payments and we're drawing smaller payments, then it's sustainable as a way to supplement the funding, particularly when we're looking at a financial future that is uncertain. Thank you.
Mr. Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Wise. I'm going to try to stay unemotional as I work to address some of the questions or statements that have been said before. And I'm going to first ask this body, even if you agree with me, don't clap. I think it's somewhat in bad form, and I've been doing it myself, so I'm self-condemnation that we're clapping on either side. We should be just working together to get something done right for the town, and so please don't if you do agree with me. If you don't agree with me and want to boo, please don't. But, yeah, can't guarantee anything. I think one of the most important things we need to address, and I think it's been addressed before, but I really want to hit it home. We're not saying this is the only source. We're saying this is a stabilizing source. Keep that in mind, right? This community, this group of our community, has not really been funded for the last X number of years. People have said 5. It's probably 30, 40 years that this group has not had any sort of sustainable funding for any sort of athletic endeavor or other adaptive endeavor that may be non-athletic. And so if we think about that, we keep saying, oh, make it a community priority. Why haven't I heard about this? Well, our own rec committee would say it's been discussion for 10 years. So if we haven't heard about it, it's our own fault. But it's been out there for 10 years, and it's been unfunded for 10 years. So while there's nice that we now have some commitment from the Finance Committee, and hopefully those of us in the room hear it, the reality is, as we already heard earlier tonight, when an override is coming in FY28, which is the next budget cycle, if that does not pass, this will not get funded as they go forward, but a stabilization fund gives it a bridge to go forward. And that's what a stabilization fund is for. So I think it's a bit of a false argument that people have been making that this is the way that a program should be built. Nobody's saying it should be built this way. We're saying it should stabilize the funding on a go-forward basis so that when there are ebbs and flows in the operating committee, in the operating budget, we can supplement those ebbs and flows to not lay off staff that have been doing wonderful programming for our youth and the adults around town. So I think that's one thing important. The second thing is that community priorities conversation. And I said this last week, and I'll say it again. Community priorities are not permanent funding sources, generally. Maybe with our, RCASA or others, we have decided to put certain things in there. This would, I would argue, probably not fit a permanent funding source in that regard. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is what the town meeting wants to do, is make it a permanent line in the budget, and then says, okay, that's something that always has to be funded. Maybe that is the right answer, but we did, and I said this before, community priority for full-day kindergarten. 5 years, at $150,000 a pop. That's a pretty big community priority. We did a great job at that. But guess what? This budget you just approved 2 days ago, or last Thursday, cut $834,000 out of a level funding school committee budget. 5 years, $750,000. 1 year, $834,000, gone. The only reason the school committee has been able to fund full-day kindergarten is because we've been very aggressively looking at other sources of income as well. The only reason we do not have to now charge for full-day kindergarten in FY27 is because we have money that we've done for school chores and bringing kids in for some of our special education programs. Otherwise, this body would be told, guess what? We're going to be charging $2,600 or more for FY27 for kindergarten. Nobody here would be like, oh, great. But that's the reality of it, because community priorities are not full and final funding sources. I think it's also important that people said, have we done this kind of thing before? And there was a couple of examples that Ms. Wellman brought up. And I think even Mary Ann brought it up as well with regards to the Special Education Reserve Fund. The Reserve Fund is not a stabilization fund on purpose, but it is the concept that is applied in that space as well. In that with a reserve fund, we were able to put money in when we know there is money to preserve and prepare in case there's a day when there isn't money. In the case of the reserve fund, we decided to, with our commitment to you, and the school committee has held that commitment, set a policy in place to cap that reserve fund. Unfortunately, I understand we can't do that by law with the stabilization fund, but maybe through policy, FinCom can come up with something like that that does a similar thing in this place. While you can't do it by this amendment or through an amendment today, you could potentially do it through policy, say cap it at $250,000 or whatever else like that, so it's not a runaway train, but perhaps. Maybe Ms. Freed can speak to that or not. But I think that is one of the concerns I'm hearing as well, is that once you set this, it can never be turned back. That's not true either, because we've also heard that once you set it, 3 years from now, if you want to, you can repeal that funding source. So even if you can't cap it, you can say it's at a high enough level that we think it's stabilized, that 3 years from now we can pull that funding source back and put it in the general fund. But we have made a choice to consciously fund a part of our community that has been unfunded for 30 or 40 or 50 years. Please hear that. This is not an either or. We can start to talk about it from an operating budget, but we also need to be planning for that rainy day. And that rainy day is right around the corner. 7.7 is the minimum that the select board will be discussing, potentially putting on the November ballot. The minimum. And the only reason they're putting on November potentially is because if it fails in November, you can come back in April and ask for a smaller number. Who did that last time? Yes, we did. Right? So let's be real about it. It's coming. To avoid that rain, you have stabilization funds on purpose. In the end, I just hope people look at this as a strategic way to help a part of our community that has never been adequately helped in this space. Let's get past the, oh, you should have done this, oh, you should have done that, oh, you should have created this, or you should have created that, and realize that this part of our community is desperate for help. And they really deserve it. And while it's unfortunate we didn't get to view the video, if you go back on Reading Recap or others, you can see the pure joy of some of these students and the families participating in this stuff. These are kids that don't have a lot of joy in a lot of their lives. And so I really ask you to, let's put aside our petty politics, which frankly we have a lot of in this room, and say what's best for the least of our town. I don't mean that pejoratively, so please, please, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Berman, I will be calling on people who have not yet spoken first, so I will come back to you. So I will skip.
I have an amendment.
We actually have another amendment over here who's been waiting quite a while to do it. I think I'll call on him, then we'll come back to you then.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Ross?
Nice. Ed Ross, Precinct 5, FinCom member. Thank you, Mr.
Order, Mr. Moderator.
Point of order.
No.
I'm sorry, I really don't want to speak. Excuse me. Both of these gentlemen have spoken before, and even though they have to present amendments, I'd appreciate the opportunity, like myself, who hasn't yet spoken, to have the chance to do that before amendments are presented.
Unless I'm wrong, I think Mr. Ross has only spoken to give a report. Is that right?
Same.
I don't think that counts. Mr. Ross?
I'll try it again. Ed Ross, Precinct 5, FinCom member. I do have an amendment. I'll just give it briefly, that I can explain it on the back end. But I sent it across, and it's to limit the, so it's in the second line from the bottom, dedicate 50% of the rental payments, and to make that number 25%. And that's in both 1 and 2. That's correct. That's correct. So just the reasoning behind that on my end, so it's kind of twofold. One is I figured this would be a compromise in, because the other portions of that 50% would go to free cash. And so that came up in our conversation within FinCom. And for folks that might be thinking that that they'd want to give the town more flexibility, this allows for that, and still kind of meeting the minimum. And I also think this would be a way to be able to kind of still maintaining the priority that we've heard kind of so much about within in the discussion tonight.
Is there second? Second, thank you. Okay, further discussion on the proposed amendment. We will come back to the order we had before, but is there any discussion on this proposed amendment? Yes, Mr. O'Neill?
John O'Neill, Precinct 6. I would like to support that amendment because it helps with one of the problems I had with this, is that we could be having a stabilization fund that grew and grew and grew, because it's going to have a dedicated funding source at a certain amount. And so 50% and 50% means 100% would be gone, and they could easily exceed, several $100,000 at a time, when that could mean taking $100,000 of that could mean a firefighter or a police officer, or teachers, that sort of thing. So I think that, for me anyway, that would be a nice compromise, that not all the monies would be going, and yet these valuable programs would get support. And especially, I think, since we'll have some time, and hopefully after all this is said and done, Burbank will come up with some monies this year, so that in fact we can seed the program, so that both stabilization funds will have some seed money going forward when we need them.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment? Yes. Oh, okay. Yes, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Laura Noonan, Precinct 4. As the mother of a disabled child who looks and looks for programs to sign my kid up for in Reading, so I don't have to drive to Wilmington, North Reading, Wakefield, Billerica, I have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll through all of the programs that are already funded. So part of me wants to just keep my mouth shut and just be thankful for the scraps that you guys are now willing to maybe talk about throwing to the disabled children and adults in this town. But the other part of me says, okay, $63,000 split in half. We're like 30 here, 30 there. Okay, maybe we could do something with that money. Oh, so 15 and 15. I don't know about you, but I run my household, and $15,000 doesn't go very far. So now we're going to just put together something, anything for $15,000. We are talking about $63,000 on a $155 million budget, and we have been arguing about it for 2 hours. This is ridiculous. I think that we should not vote for this amendment. I think that we should leave it back the way it was, because before it was 63 split in half instead of 30 split in half, which you might as well give these kids nothing. You guys are sitting here saying that these kids don't deserve to have any programs. How about we go to the rec committees and we say, okay, all of the adult programs, let's just get rid of all of those, because the adults don't actually value sports, apparently. So let's just get rid of all of those. Those people have jobs. They can go to LA Fitness or wherever and do something, and then we'll have that money, and we can use that for adaptive programming. I mean, this amendment is ridiculous, and I please vote it down.
Mr. Pacino.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Phil Pacino, Precinct 5. Again, as I reminded people before, I've been here since 1980. 1980, I've been a member here. I don't know if I'm the longest serving member or not, but, I look at the numbers here. 25% of 63,000 is only $15,000. 50% of 63,000 is $31,000. This is not a lot of money. I just want people to be aware of what actually numbers we're talking here. I don't know, when we talked earlier today that maybe this program needs $100,000. We're not giving enough money even at this point to pay that, to fund this program. This is going to have to come back and go against the tax levy. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Arena, on the
Thank you,
amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to clarify the intent of the amendment. The language in our books tonight describes this as a range, which will be then voted on in town meeting. Is the intent to fix that number tonight as part of this motion?
Ms. Freed.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. So under state law, when you dedicate a revenue stream to a stabilization fund, you have to specify the percentage of that revenue stream that's going to be dedicated as part of your vote. So tonight, we need to fix the number. The minimum that number can be is 25%. Does that clarify the question, Mr. Arena?
I think so. Alternatively, could you leave the language to be determined by a separate vote?
No, once you, the same vote where you're dedicating the revenue stream.
In subsequent years, then, would 25 be the default, or would we have we'd have to amend it to make it a different number? Is that correct?
It stays at 25% if this amendment
Okay.
passes. Yeah, and you have to stay. Well, that's a good question. If you could increase it next year, I
Or
think.
just change it. Not necessarily
Yeah.
increase it, but just change it.
Yeah, I know you can't undedicate for 3 years. You can't terminate that for 3 years. I query whether you can change the percentage. I'd have to research that.
Well, that's kind of the spirit of this. You can dedicate a fund source, but determine the amount in a separate vote. That's really what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think your dedicated amount would have to be for the 3-year period, and then you could
Okay.
change it.
Mr. Moderator, the other point is I believe I heard that in the first bullet, item 1, that there was already a 25K allocation made. So the net effect of this would be to create an asymmetry between the two. I understand the spirit of it, but I think since some funds are already being provided for number 1, this actually overfunds number 1 and funds number 2 at a deficit. So I get the spirit of it, I just don't think it meets the intent. If the motion maker perhaps would contemplate an alternative structure.
Ms. Freed.
Sorry, thank you. Mr. Arena, are you saying that they're different amounts?
My understanding is that in the budget which we passed last week, that there was a 25K allocation, I think made by FinCom, into item 1, and that item 2 at the moment is unfunded. Do I have that correct?
Ms. Wellman.
That's correct. The school department has $25,000 in a community priority that was approved
Okay.
at Article 10.
So,
A point of order, Mr. Wise.
Sorry, just to be clear. John, that is incorrect.
I beg your
The
pardon.
25,000 was given to the operating budget,
There you go.
not to this.
So it's
Thank
not-
you.
I see it's not allocated.
It is
to
not
the
allocated to this at all. It's allocated to the operating budget.
Thank you. But certainly the
point.
intention
Thank
is to
you.
have that 25K flow to that purpose. I get that. That said, if that were to play through, this ends up creating the asymmetry by putting an additional 25 on top of an existing funding stream in the operating budget. I'm wondering if the motion maker would contemplate tweaking this to comprehend the original 25K add to the operating budget.
Mr. Ross?
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. My only concern for doing that is that there isn't anything that exists on the rec side. So we're not. So yes, there's going to be an imbalance now, but that's because there's a program already set up in the schools to be able to do that.
Okay.
And then going forward, they're going to be both, kind
Right.
of funded at the same level.
That makes sense, thank you. Lastly, the numbers given by Ms. Wellman, when you strip out the COVID years, which are an anomaly for just about everyone, the average per year is substantially greater than 63. And while there is a variable aspect, I think it's more appropriate to look at something ex-COVID rather than include it for this purpose. Thank you.
Mr. Carnahan, comment?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Carnahan, Finance Committee. I wanted to offer a clarification in response to that comment that, well, for one thing, I want to be clear about which fiscal year we are talking about. So actually, maybe I have a question myself. My understanding, you correct me if I'm wrong, was that passing this motion would create these funds. The rent payments collected during fiscal year 27 would go into these funds, and then town meeting could allocate them to spend them on programs in fiscal year 28. That's not accurate? Oh.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you. So potentially, so the fund will be created as of July 1, 2026, and funds can be transferred, will be dedicated to those funds. And my understanding is that rent payments are done quarterly. Jane, I'm looking to you.
We get a payment in the spring.
Oh, you just got one payment.
Could you repeat what the town manager
So
said?
yes, then
Okay.
you'd be correct. We received one payment. Okay, so yes, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought they were paid quarterly.
Mr. Carnahan?
Yes, so to be clear, given the current way in which Burbank makes their rent payments, which is in one lump sum every spring, then in the town meeting in the spring of 2027, we would be able to allocate funds from these stabilization funds towards new programs that would otherwise have to be funded out of the fiscal year 28 budget. So obviously, we haven't planned the fiscal year 28 budget yet. One could, of course, increase or decrease the amounts of those depending on how much stabilization funding or other funding is available to supplement the operating budget there.
All set. Mr. Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom Grant, Precinct 4. This actually raised a question for me about the original motion, so I hope it's in bounds. But so in the original motion, the entire Burbank rent payment would go into these two funds. I got the head nodding, thank you. So like last year when there was 0, nothing would go in. 2 years ago, there was 0, nothing would go in. 3 years ago, there was 113,000. And so 55,000 plus would go into each one, which would fund like a whole year for each of them, right? Because we were saying like 50,000 would be double what we spent last year for unified sports. So in that type of situation, there would be like no draw needed from the stabilization fund.
Ms. Wellman?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
What I'm getting to is like you could have a really good year for Burbank, and so the stabilization fund could have like more than a year's worth of funding in the stabilization fund. And so the only way that goes away is if like the stabilization fund gets dissolved, like there's no, because it can't be spent on other purposes.
It cannot be spent on other purposes. So if you, yeah, council is saying that after 3 years, we could spend it on something else if we wanted to eliminate the source of the funds.
Raise your hand if you want to eliminate the stabilization fund. Like, no one wants to eliminate it.
Yeah, no,
But good luck to that person.
You would be able to save money in that account and draw it down over time. So in years when there are lower payments from Burbank, there would be a smoothing effect.
So I think like besides the very inconsistent amount that comes from Burbank, in like multiple good years, having a lot of money stored in the fund that can't be tapped for anything but this source, while we're contemplating cutting like police, teachers, et cetera, doesn't seem like a great trade-off to me, whereas this seems like, as somebody else already said, a good compromise.
The new motion.
The amendment does. Thank you.
Yes, on the other side.
Kevin Lucy, Precinct 1. I just want everyone to keep in mind that this money comes from youth sports. It's excess funds from youth sports, and it's going to go back to children with learning disabilities to also participate in youth sports. Let's keep that in mind. It's excess funds from parents paying for their kids to play sports, and those excess funds are going to go back to children with disabilities to play sports and participate.
Keep in mind, we're talking about the amendment.
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, thank you. You know, $60,000 between these two groups is not an exorbitant ask. We just agreed to potentially increase our taxes by $1 million with less debate than we're actually doing right now. I mean, we really need to keep, you know, we need to keep focus of what we're actually doing here. We just potentially raised our taxes by $1 million, but we're debating about $63,000 a year for kids to have an equal high school experience as their peers. Thank you.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment? None appearing. Are we ready for the vote? This requires a majority vote. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please raise your hand. And those opposed? And the chair is in doubt. Do we have our 4 tellers from last week? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, we do. Okay, all those in favor, now we're voting on the proposed amendment only here. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, please rise. A yes vote is in favor of the proposed amendment. A no vote, the main motion goes back to the way it was made. Yes vote is for 25, and the no vote goes back to the... Right. You vote, if you vote yes, you're voting for the change that Mr. Ross had asked for. Otherwise, if you vote no, we're still back to the main motion. So all those in favor of the proposed amendment, please rise if you haven't already.
Seven.
24.
24.
26.
26.
34.
34. And now those opposed to the proposed amendment, please rise.
$18.
18.
21.
21.
13.
13.
11.
11. The vote being 91 in the affirmative and 63 in the negative, the motion carries, and the amendment is now part of the main motion. 63. All right. We now return to the main motion. Ms. O'Neill.
Mary Ellen O'Neill, Precinct 6. This has been a very difficult conversation, and it's brought up a lot of old feelings, a lot of personal feelings. And I am changing how I came in tonight, and I have to explain myself about that. But before I do, I want to clarify two things. The money coming in from the Burbank rent is never gravy. It is not excess. It was put in the operating budget, it's free cash. It was used. And the second thing I want to clarify is that there was some misinformation given to various committees in town. I was in town meeting in 1997, and I was on one of the committees that oversaw a portion of the 10-year agreement between the Burbank and Ice Arena and the town in terms of payment. And the intent was always that the money went to free cash unencumbered. There was no, it needs to go to X, Y, and Z. It was unencumbered. It was clear. The reason I'm changing my vote or my feeling about this tonight is that I too have a disabled child, and I understand the emotional strain of that job and the search for services and how difficult it can be. If I had heard that the school committee was supporting understanding disabilities and had kept this up, I might have stayed the same because I am concerned about the funding model. We can examine it in 3 years, and that's what I hope we do. But I do feel they are an underserved and deserving group, and I will be supporting Article 14. Thank you.
Okay, again, I know you want to make a proposed amendment, but I would like to get some of the people who haven't spoken yet first. I will come back to you. So, Mr. Dietz?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jeffrey Dietz, Precinct 5. I have a question for I guess, maybe Jim Sullivan. How did the disparity in the number of programs for, there's a huge disparity between the number of programs for disabled kids and for able kids. How did that disparity get so big?
The simple question is I wear many hats, and one of them isn't specializing in therapeutic recreation. To do it correctly, you need to have someone that has a degree or is certified. I'd be doing a disservice putting on a hat as a therapeutic rec and putting programs out there. I can contract programs out, but that comes with a heavy fee.
Okay, and I heard you mention other towns, Burlington, maybe Andover, that have programs like this. Do you know how those programs are funded in these other towns?
I believe it's out of their town budget. 2 of them have 2 full-time recreation specialists overseeing all their programs.
Okay. All right, so I'm just trying to find where my speech hasn't already been said by other people. I guess, so my concern about this is that it creates this rigid earmark that limits future flexibility, and once the revenue's committed, it's, I'm sorry, I'm finished asking you a question, so feel free to sit. Okay. It creates a rigid earmark that limits future flexibility, and once the revenue's committed, at least for 3 years, it's no longer available for town meeting to allocate based on changing needs. And we are being asked to adopt this without a clear financial picture. We don't have a firm understanding of how much revenue is involved or how stable the source will be over time. We have no visibility into the expected needs of the programs. Every other program that asks for tax dollars is expected and obligated to estimate their costs and submit a budget before receiving funds. We neither need nor want to grant exceptions to this requirement. Creating 2 separate funds from the same revenue source adds a lot of complexity, which has already been pointed out by the fact that we have the $25,000 that might be going to the school, but I guess it's going to the general fund, so maybe that is not really the issue. But it's important to point out that the Finance Committee itself was split 4-4 on this article. This is highly unusual, and it does signal that there are huge, real concerns, even among those tasked with advising us on financial policy. And I want to emphasize something fundamental about how we govern. Our annual budget process, which is set forth in Article 7 of our Home Rule Charter and reinforced by our bylaws, in our bylaws, it exists for a reason. It's where we as elected officials, after a thorough line item by line item analysis by the Finance Committee, the Town CFO, Town Manager, and the School Committee, they weigh priorities and make trade-offs, and in doing so, they ensure the transparency and accountability in how our public taxpayer funds are allocated. And this article moves that funding outside that core process by pre-committing the revenue in advance. It kind of undermines the very structure we rely on to make thoughtful, balanced decisions every year. You know, we can and should continue to support adaptive and unified sports through that established process. I mean, I know emotions are running hot, but my feelings get hurt when I'm told that if I don't support this article, that I don't care about unified sports, because it's just not true. And passage of this article, what does it say about our town government and its legislative body? It says that the budget process, as defined by our town bylaws and home rule charter, is broken, and that this body cannot be trusted to keep these important programs fully funded. So, for these reasons, I urge you to vote against passage of Article 14, and thank you.
On the other side?
Bob Coulter, Precinct 6, move the question.
Move the question.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator?
Point of order?
2 hours.
What was the point of order?
We can move forward. Let's
Yes,
go.
hold
Let's
on.
go.
Please, 1 second. What was the point of order?
Amendment, and he's calling the question.
He's moving the question, right. Is there a second to that? Second. This requires a 2/3 vote. It is non-debatable. All those who are in favor of ending debate on this subject, please rise.
Twenty-three.
23.
5.
5.
5, too.
I'm sorry, 5?
5 also, sorry.
Oh, 5, okay.
25.
25. And those opposed to ending debate, please rise.
Three.
3.
15.
15.
30.
30.
Is it 13?
13?
13 or 30?
Was that 3-0?
Was it 13 or 30?
3-0.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Pacino?
44?
44.
What is the vote? I don't know.
The vote being 58 in the affirmative, 92 in the negative, the motion fails, and we continue debate. Okay.
Hopefully it'll get us out of here. Is it my turn?
Well, we're calling on people who haven't spoken yet first. So, Ms. Alvarado? Ms. Alvarado?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Vanessa Alvarado, Precinct 5. Wow, it's been a long night. Okay. Is this better?
That is better, yeah.
Excellent. Vanessa Alvarado, Precinct 5. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a few questions. First, are there any other operating expenses that would normally be in the operating budget that have a stabilization fund?
Ms. Wellman?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
When do we, I know you said earlier that we get rent from Burbank when we get it once a year. Approximately what time of year do we normally get that?
We usually get it around March.
Okay. And have we gotten anything from them this year?
No.
Okay. And you said earlier that we hadn't gotten anything from them last year.
Correct.
Okay. If we pass this article, how much would be in the fund?
There would be no money allocated into the fund until we received a rent payment from Burbank.
Okay, so the earliest we would get something would be next March, so March 2027.
Around that time frame.
Okay. If an override fails, then this fund is empty.
I beg your pardon?
If an override fails, and we've given funding to the schools to support this in the next budget. If an override fails, the stabilization fund is still at zero and cannot help if any cuts are presented, which I don't think they would be, but hypothetically.
The stabilization is not related to the override.
No, I understand that. I mean, if an override fails and cuts have to be made, and cuts are made to the programs through the schools, there is no backup here because the fund is empty. Hypothetically.
If an override fails in November, and the select board wanted to bring it back, and it were to fail again, then there would be a series of cuts that would be unrelated to the stabilization fund.
Agree, but that means there's no backup.
That's right.
If there's no accounts, if it was recommended, which I don't think it would be, and I don't think this body would approve that, this fund still has $0 next year.
This fund could have money next year if Burbank makes a rent payment next year, according to their lease. My understanding is that they are very close to their contingency reserve, so we would expect a payment next year.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, the Burbank did just increase the amount that they can keep in reserves. Is that true?
No, that's
Is
not
that
true.
Under discussion?
No. In the lease, it was actually slightly reduced because the lease has a function within it to increase it according to the CPI. So it's only slightly. It's about approximate as to where their CPI adjusted reserve was. I think it was like 417 to 415 in the lease.
I hear some discussion from the select board liaison that had been involved with the Burbank. Can someone confirm that for me?
It's a difference, it's de minimis. It's about $2,000. And the number was changed through the select board requests.
Could you speak to the microphone? I'm sorry, there's chatter down here, and the body needs to hear this. So would you like to get up to the microphone? Ms. Herrick?
Karen Herrick, Precinct 8 in the Select Board. Granted, it was a long discussion that night. The lease previously calculated a reserve fund based on the CPI. Really wasn't being calculated correctly. It was my recollection on our Select Board meeting that we just they asked for 500,000 and we compromised at a different number and we got rid of the CPI.
Again, could we? Yeah.
Well, we put it up on the screen.
Do you have the lease? Okay. Well, I'm just seeing Jackson put it. Yeah.
So I can read it. Oh, it's projecting here, Jack. Oh, there we go. Is that I have to do something?
That's the same thing right here. You can just look at the screen.
Yeah, but I don't know why it's not showing there. I have to drag it to a second monitor. Okay, here we go. All right. Sorry, I am not a tech person. Okay. So this is the language. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Can someone hold that? I got this. Okay. So you can see that it says here, the contingency reserve shall not exceed $415,000 at any given moment without permission from the Board of Selectmen. Nevertheless, the 415 cap shall increase to reflect the increase in the consumer price index. And the prior lease had a similar provision. I think what the town manager was saying before was that where they were at with the CPI increases based off of the original lease was actually slightly higher than 415. I think it was like 417 and change. And so this actually reduced what the contingency reserve could be, but they are starting now at 415 and it will go up with CPI.
Great, thank you very much. Is there a capital plan that the Burbank has publicly available? And the reason I ask, I don't necessarily need to see it, but they, like any building, have ongoing costs for repairs and maintenance, et cetera. So if they hit their cap of 415, and then they need major renovations or upgrades or improvements in order to maintain it, it's possible that they will never necessarily exceed that amount, which means that we can create this fund and nothing comes back into it, or very minimal amounts. I think these programs are important. I think they should be a priority and they should be funded, and we should do that through the operating budget to ensure that they have the necessary amounts and reliable revenue sources in order to continue for those programs to exist. I will not be supporting this article. Thank you.
Mr. Corum?
Disengage.
Jeffrey Corum, Precinct 7. I was on the Finance Committee when we considered this article, and I'm now on the School Committee. I voted against this article when I was on the Finance Committee because it was not clear that Article 14 was solving the problem. The funding would not be available for FY27 because there wouldn't be any money in it until possibly next year. But I did make the motion to add the $25,000 to the school department budget. I wanted to also bring up two items that came up more actually during discussions last week. The first is that someone commented that unified sports are funded from the athletic revolving fund. That is, there are no user fees for unified sports. It is currently free for all participants, both those with disabilities and the peer partners. Second, the athletics line item in the school department budget is over $800,000, which already accounts for an additional $400,000 that is covered by user fees and gate receipts, as well as donations from booster groups to pay some coaches. So I really like the idea of unified sports. I really like that it's about kids playing sports and having fun and maybe doing a sport that they will continue to do even after they leave school, like basketball or bocce. But when I think about what our taxes should pay for, I consider essentials like police, fire, education. If we're going to go to the voters to approve an override, I would find it hard to explain why we allocated even more money to athletics, even for as great a program as unified sports. I would find it hard to explain to our seniors, another vulnerable population, why they have to pay fees for activities that were once covered by ARPA funds, but we are expanding unified sports to the elementary schools without charging. So what I would like to see would be a way to specify that some percentage of the recreation budget and the athletic budgets for the schools go to adaptive programming, such that if we are funding sports at any level, that we have some fixed amount that would definitely go to adaptive sports. But if the override doesn't pass, and if we've seen in other towns that they've looked at eliminating funding for the athletic departments, it would be a little odd to have only unified sports funded through this reserve account specified in Article 14. So, thank you.
Ms. Perry?
Paula Perry, Precinct 1. This has been such a hard debate, and I can imagine with FinCom it must have been really hard because it's really, when you really support a program, you're wholly behind it, but you don't support the process by which we're talking about funding it, that's a hard no. And as a previous FinCom member, that's how it is for me. Right now it's about process. And I believe it was when I was on FinCom that we used the process of a town priority with RCAS, and now it's this thriving, well-funded program. It was a very effective way of saying we feel so strongly about this as a community, we're going to make it part of accommodated costs. I know some people have said, well, we've been unfunded, sorry, a little dry in here, unfunded for 10 years, but we haven't had that debate in town meeting. It hasn't been brought to us, so it hasn't been debated and unfunded for 10 years from a town meeting perspective, because this is just being brought to us. I am so thankful we put $25,000 in the budget, and to be honest, I wish now it was 50, because that's the only way it's going to get funded now. To say we'll put 25% or 50% of zero right now doesn't help the program. And right now we know that there's no funding source at this moment from Burbank Ice Arena. So it doesn't help the program. So I feel like it's selling a bag of goods that doesn't exist. And, you know, responsible funding and budget processes, we debate every year. That is our job, and that was highlighted also. That is our job every year, debate the programs. And this is a great program. It should be highlighted, it should be debated on an annual basis, and that is our job. And it is a hard job, but that's what we all signed up for. So I have a hard time supporting this, and I can't, because it's really not the process by which we were all elected.
Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Barry Berman, Precinct 6. I love this program. I want to see this program funded. I hate the process by which it's being proposed. So I'd like to make an amendment. And the amendment is, at the very bottom of the article, is that we return town meeting spring of 2029 to reauthorize this program. And the reason why I want to give it 3 years is that it was mentioned by the proponents, and I think by Ms. Wellman, that this was not supposed to be the sole funding source of this program. It was going to be something that kind of eased it in and kind of smoothed out the edges when there wasn't enough money. I think someone spoke before about, ran the Little League and did fundraising. I think I heard the proponents saying that they were going to go out and help raise money. I want to get this program started and off the ground, but give it 3 years. And if there's enough money that raised from other sources, we could rescind this stabilization fund. Whatever's left, return it to the town coffers, and the program goes. I don't want it to be an all or nothing kind of thing where we either fund this program through this mechanism or the program goes unfunded. We have $25,000 as a start. Let's pass this, but then require ourselves to come back in 3 years, look at what kind of other funds are available, whether that's from town funds, fundraising, grants, the way Ricasa did it, and then come back and just decide, okay, granted, this is a lousy funding source, but we really want to support the program, and then we have to come back to it and reauthorize it in 3 years. And if there's enough money, great. If there's not, and people still want to do it, then maybe we keep going. But I think right now, it's being pitted that if you don't support this, you know, you don't like the program. I love the program. I hate this article, right? So I think this is a compromise which gets it started. Granted, there's no money in the first year, but from what Ms. Wellman said, they're close. There could be money next year. Let's give it a runway of 3 years, get it started, get the program going, get momentum, and then we have to come back and either it funds itself or we dissipate the stabilization fund.
Before accepting a second, I would like to ask the town council, I would like to ask the town council if this is legal enough to authorizing a future town meeting. I don't believe it is. Town council, please.
My point of order is that this is not within the scope of the original motion. This is,
Well, we're actually, before you even get to that, we're discussing whether this is even a legal motion or not. Okay, so say your point again, I'm sorry.
Come on up. Laura Noonan, Precinct 4. My point of order was that his motion amendment is not within the scope. That's the whole rule for making amendments. It has to be within the original scope, the original intent of the motion, and he's completely changing it. You can't do that. I remember the last town meeting, Mr. Moderator, it was you that was making that point, and that's how I learned it.
Yes, and I think you were probably right, but I do want to get the opinion of the town council. And I may very well rule in your direction, Ms. Freed.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I understand the intent, Mr. Berman. I don't believe that DLS would view that this is an allowable motion when you are setting up a stabilization fund and dedicating a source. There's nothing that would, the fund has to exist and the dedication has to continue until it's rescinded. And here it seems to suggest that it automatically would rescind in 3 years unless reauthorized. I don't believe that is a power that town meeting can impose. Now, if you would like to submit a warrant article in 3 fiscal years, or another individual wants to submit a warrant article in 3 fiscal years, we can make that like an instructional motion, like commitment, but the creation and dedication has to continue until there's a separate article to rescind it.
It's not suggesting that we're going to rescind it in 3 years. It suggests that we're going to reauthorize
Right, but
it in
if you-
3 years.
Right, but reauthorize implies that absent that authorization, the fund would be automatically rescinded. And DLS and the way that the guidance from DOR is drafted is the opposite. It continues until it is rescinded.
So someone can come up next year and rescind this if it passes.
Not until 3 fiscal years.
So in 3, all right.
Okay, I really wanted to hear that opinion, but I am going to rule out of scope, so it's not something we can vote on.
Alicia Williams, Precinct 8.
Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to address 2 things. I left it out of my initial comments because I thought it was maybe a little inappropriate, but the politicizing of this entire article, the problem is Burbank. Like, that's the word. If we took the word Burbank out of this, everybody'd be like, this is a great idea, woohoo! But no, we have put the word Burbank in it. So therefore, everybody has a problem with it. And then on top of that, you've decided that these special education children are worth it, but only a little bit worth it. So we're just going to give them a little bit of money. And that feels, as a parent, really crappy because we fight tooth and nail for things for our kids to do. My second thing is Mr. Quorum raised the point about user fees. And I was not going to do this. I had thought about it, but I wasn't going to do it, but I am going to do it. As a special education parent, since 2021, I have spent $85,000 out of pocket cash on my credit card for doctors, therapists, advocates, lawyers, specialty camps. We're going to a specialty camp this summer for 2 weeks. It is a $5,000 camp. My daughter, who is typical, is going to her camp for $300. So I'm going to say that anybody who brings up user fees is going to see me lose my mind. Thank you.
You've been waiting a while. I'll tuck you over here first, Ms. Bruce, then we'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sheila Bruce, Precinct 3. I have sat here and listened to this for hours like everyone else. And I have a grandson who is autistic, and he has not yet come to his turn for Unified because it's not in his grade yet. And I just think for anyone that can sit here and say, well, we just need to wait for this, or we just, as someone said, kicking the can down the road, when is his turn? He struggles. He goes to school every day. He tries his hardest. He has trouble in social situations. He has trouble in sporting situations. My daughter is his fiercest advocate, and his grandfather and I are with him every single day. And to see this just keep getting pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. We voted on a $155 million budget on Thursday. We gave one population, the seniors of this town, a $30 million senior center. This is a drop in the bucket, and we can't give it to these kids. It's very disheartening as a lifetime resident of this town to just see that these small percentage of kids can't get what they need to be able to live a happy and more fulfilled life. I'm asking you to vote yes on this and give these kids what they need. It's just not right to not fund this program. Thank you.
Back over here. Mr. O'Connor, point of order. Microphone, please. Microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. If Mr. Ross's amendment passed, the 25%, should those track changes now be accepted and be part of the main motion that we're discussing?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Right, I know, but it looks like it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tom O'Connor, Precinct 8. Earlier this evening, when I saw the excellent presentation, I do believe I saw something in there where this program is endorsed by Mass State Olympics. Is that correct? It is. Then my question is, does Mass State Olympics bring anything? What do they bring to the table for this program? Anyone address that? I mean, financially, uniform, I mean, what?
Microphone, thank you. Ms. Hurley?
It is a little bit, yes, but more it's the education that comes with it. So I've been through a lot of trainings with how they the protocol that they want used for bocce. Believe it or not, the adaptive bocce sets cost like $350. They supply you with your first one. They provide training and workshops if teachers want to go to that. They did donate when I have to give them our rosters for Unified Sports Day. They send us a medal for all the participants, but it's not, the funding is minimal. We did get when we reached Unified Champion School status, I forget exactly how much that was, maybe 1,000? Yeah, it wasn't a lot, but we're considered a Unified Champion School District. You get a small, stipend for that, but it's minimal. It's not enough to fund much.
Okay, thank you. My question then would be, if you may know, does the Mass Special Olympics, if we should pass this, would they give us any matching funds if this passes? No?
Unified Sports are under the umbrella of Special Olympics of Massachusetts. So Special Olympics of Mass is the greater organization that works to train for unified sports.
And finally, I'd like to know, the athletes that are in your program, are they eligible for the week that the Mass Special Olympics holds in, I think it's in June, in a couple of the college and as participants?
Yeah, some of our students do participate in other Special Olympic events. A lot of those events are for kids that will be beyond high school age. So some of our athletes go on to do that. We do have students who are part of Unified Sports if they graduate from the high school, but they stay on for their post-grad because they're part of the school system until age 22.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for your time with this program.
Ms. Janowski?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Karen Janowski, Precinct 2. I'm so discouraged. I hear people saying, I like the program, I'm in support of the program, I'm in support of our students and our adults with disabilities, but I'm done with the but. What do we value as a community? And when we say it's the process, There are times that we pick and choose when the process is important, and this is one of the times that the process is not important. This is the time that we need to communicate to those in our community who do not have a voice of their own that they are important, that we value them. We are talking about a pittance of money, and I can't believe that we're hung up on the process. Give up the process. Let's just do what's right. Let's just do the right thing and get this over with. Thank you.
Over on this side.
Eric Affen, Precinct 4. First of all, I just want to say that everybody who has been speaking tonight, I hear a lot of passion. I think that this is a very difficult issue for a lot of us because of the process versus the passion and the support. I will say that I agree this is a very clunky mechanism. I think it is imperfect. I don't think it's ideal. I hope that the town and the powers that be and the smarter minds in the financial world can figure out a better, sustainable solution for the future. But as imperfect as it might be, I would rather err on the side of supporting the article for the short term and finding a longer-term solution that is more sustainable and probably cleaner for the future. Thanks.
Mr. Dardino?
Phil Dardino, Precinct 3. Move the question.
Okay.
Roll call. Roll call. Laura Noonan.
Okay, do we
I'm
have-
requesting a roll call vote.
Well, we'll first take the vote on ending debate, and then I'll ask for that. Point of order?
I hate to be a stickler, but Mr. Dardino opined on the main motion.
That was.
Oh, I
That-
thought it was ever.
Yeah, that was a while ago. All right, all those in favor of ending debate, please rise.
– 24.
24.
36.
Excuse me, what was that?
36.
36, okay.
43.
43.
45.
45. And those who are opposed to ending debate, please rise.
Zero.
1.
0, 1,
1.
1,
1.
1. The vote being 148 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. The question has been moved. Debate is ended. Now, we have a point of order, or not a point of order, but somebody calling for a roll call vote.
Laura Noonan, Precinct 4, calling for a roll call.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just repeated it. Roll
Just
call.
repeat it.
Yes.
Okay, yes, thank you. We need, Ms. Noonan, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Laura.
okay, yeah. Okay, we need 20 people to ask for that. Do we have 20 people calling for a roll call vote? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, okay, we do. All right, we will have a roll call vote. All right. Point of order? We are voting on the yes, the amended one, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Is this the latest? So many of them over there. That's the one, okay. Okay. That's it, okay, are we ready? Just a couple of seconds. Go, okay. All right, again, as we did the other night, we will do this by precinct. We'll begin with Precinct 1. Grace Arena? Yes. Yes. Okay. John Arena? Yes. Yes. Antonio Afero? Yes. Rebecca Bailey? Yes. Roy Benjamin? Roy Benjamin? No. Heather Bramante? Yes. Salvatore Bramante? Emily DeRee? Yes. Linda Snow Doxer? No. Okay, Mark Doxer. No. Nancy Doctor, excuse me. No. Okay, Megan Fidler-Carey. Yes. Andrew Fotino. Yes. Diana Halsey. Yes. John Halsey. John Halsey? No. Okay, Deborah Hattery. Yes. Sarah Littlefield. Sarah Littlefield. Kevin Lucy. Yes. Sheila Mulroy. Yes. Carla Nazaro. Yes. Paula Perry. No. David Panett. Yes. Karen Panett. Yes. Mark Nazaro. Yes. Okay, on to precinct 2. Margaret Connors. Margaret Connors? No. David Craven. Yes. Susan Craven. Yes. Vanessa Curry. Yes. William Dalton. William Dalton? No. Anthony DeRezzo. No. Christine Ford. No. David Gentile. Yes. Andrew Gregory. No. Tara Gregory. Denise Iazzo. Yes. Karen Janowski. Yes. Carolyn Johnson. Yes. Kenneth Johnson. Yes. Ann Klein. Yes. Nicole Lamson. Yes. Matthew McLeod. Jessica Noble Gibbs. Yes. John Sasso. Yes. Emily Sisson. Yes. Matthew Steyer. Michael Storti. Michael Storti? No. Mark Ventura. Mark Ventura? No. Laura Wilson. Yes. Precinct 3. Adita Bengali.
Aditya, yes.
Eric Bergstrom. Douglas Bruce. Yes. Sheila Bruce. Yes. Charles Burke. Jason Clark. Yes. Philip Dadino. Yes. Daniel Dewar. Yes. Emily Eagleston. Laura Fusco. Tara Giardina. Kathleen Harrington. Maureen Hurley. Yes. Sarah Paul McCarty. Yes. Devin Pinkham. Not here, okay. Allison Powell. Is that a yes? Yes. Okay. Ronald Powell.
Yes.
Okay. Amy Sane. Joseph Serafine. Yes. Michael Shemansky. Yes. Matthew Sullivan. Frank Tusarkani. Oh, I skipped one. That's good. All right. Melissa Talal? No. Where were we? Oh, Mary Tusarkani? Not here. Okay. All right. Precinct 4. Sarah Brucolacchio? No. Judith Coltman? Yes. Robin Dazkowitz? Adam Denhart. Yes. Patrick Drummy. Yes. Christopher Feudo. Yes. Kerry Fox. Eric Gaffin. Yes. Erin Gaffin. Yes. Thomas Grant. Yes. Dana Garino. Jennifer Hillary. Yes. Jeffrey Jadul. Yes. Emily James. Yes. Marianne Downing. Lindsay Monahan. Yes. Laura Noonan. Yes. Mary Christine Paxton. Yes. Ralph Preston. Elizabeth Sherland. Yes. Christopher Soria. Karen Whitelam, Liz Whitelam. Okay. Thomas Wise. Yes. Excuse me. Vanessa Alvarado. No. Carlo Bacci. Jonathan Barnes. No. Jared Beliveau. Yes. Angela Binda.
No.
Jody Campos. Yes. Jeffrey Dietz.
No.
Helena Johnson? No. Catherine Cramer?
Yes.
Sharilla Lestrade? Christine Lusk? Eileen Manning? Philip Pacino? Okay. Mary Parr? No. No. No? Is that a no?
That was a no for Mary Parr.
Karen Rose Gillis? Edward Ross? Julie Ross? Justin Scott? Rick Schaffer? John B. Sullivan? David Talbot? Julie Talbot? Neil Taylor? Nancy Zimlack? Precinct 6. Linda Ananian? Jesse Arnold? Barry Berman?
Yes.
James Bonazzoli? Cynthia Cool? Stephen Cool? Robert Coulter? Not here. John Federico? Gabriella Graceffa? Ann Gelati? Daniel Malone? Kelly Malone? Lindsay McCarthy? James McIntosh? Cheryl Moschella? Am I all right? Okay. Okay. John O'Neill, I'm sorry. Yes. Mary Ellen O'Neill? Yes. Carrie Perry? Yes. Anne Rand? Yes. David Rocci? Yes. Frank Rizza? Yes. Maria Salvatelli? Yes. Janetta Stith? No. Marianne Tompkins? Precinct 7. Carl Anderson? Yes. Joy Bolio? Yes. Joseph Carnahan?
Yes.
Jeffrey Coram? Mark Delaney? Charles Donnelly Moran? Yes. Kerry Donnell? Yes. Travis Estes? Yes. Pamela Goodale? Yes. Ryan Johnstone? Yes. Timothy Kirwan? Michael Lacey? Yes. Mark Logston? Yes. Hillary Mateve? Yes. Jacqueline McCarthy? Gina McCormick? Yes. Gennady Pilyavsky? Yes. Jana Stafford? Jeffrey Struble? No. John Brendan Sullivan? Yes. Erin Tierney? Yes. Amy Ward? Yes. Carolyn Whiting? No. Corinne Wolf? Okay, Precinct 8. Richard Abadi? Yes. Elizabeth Blumen? Yes. Sean Brandt? Yes. Christopher Calabresi? Kendra Cooper? Yes. Pamela Daskalakis? Yes. Joshua Goldlust?
Yes.
Joseph Harrington?
No.
Margaret Harrington? No. Laurie Hayes? Yes. Karen Herrick? No. Stephen Herrick?
No.
Eileen Laterio?
Yes.
Bruce McKenzie? No. Joseph McDonough? No. Emily McNaughton? Yes. Todd Merkel? Yes. Martha Moore? Yes. Casey Moulton? Yes. Melissa Murphy? Yes. Thomas O'Connor?
Yes.
Kevin Sexton?
Yes.
Vanessa Silva?
Yes.
Alicia Williams?
Yes.
All right, did we miss anybody? Okay, we'll have the total in just a second. The vote being 126 in the affirmative and 29 in the negative, the motion carries.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Moderator. Move to adjourn.
1 second. Okay, hold on.
Point of order.
29, okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Point
Yes,
of order.
move to adjourn, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, what was the point of order first?
Question.
Okay.
The next time someone asks for a roll call, is it permitted to ask for a straw vote so that that person can choose to withdraw their request for a roll call instead of taking all this time when clearly there's great support for an article?
We'll take that under advisement. I'm not sure I would want to go that route. Now, we have a motion to adjourn. We have a second? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning until Monday, please raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries. This town meeting is adjourned until Monday.